A very good evening to everyone out there. So today we meet for the fifth session on economic survey, and today's agenda is basically, as you can see on the screen, it is to discuss chapter number 10, that is social infrastructure and development. Is that very clear? So that is the agenda for today's session. Now, before we proceed with today's session, let me just give you a clarity with respect to how we are going to proceed with the chapter today. Now, in case you have got some time and you have gone through the summary or the entire document, which is a rare possibility, but at least you've got the summary, so you might have gone through the summary of this chapter. You would realize that apart from the schemes and apart from few datas here and there, we do not have anything as far as this chapter is concerned, right? It consists of certain schemes which the government has launched, and even with respect to the data, we do not have the updated data, as in the data which is being provided to us for most of the sections is constituting the data which was existing in pre-pandemic phase, right? Because of the lag which is existing, and so we do not have any concrete evidence with respect to the current data or to what extent the impact of pandemic has been observed on various aspects of social sector, whether it is health, whether it is education or skill development for that matter, or employment opportunities for that matter. So that is the harsh reality, but this is the fact as far as this chapter is concerned. So now we were just thinking that how are we supposed to go about this chapter? ऐसा तो है नहीं कि the chapter is not relevant. See, if you look at the content of the chapter, so in the broad scenario, it is very relevant. It is relevant from GS paper 1, it is relevant for GS paper 2, it is relevant for your prelims, it is relevant for your essay and GS paper 3 obviously, right? But in what capacity this chapter has to be prepared, that needs to be deliberated upon. So what we are going to do in today's session is, I am going to discuss the broad possibilities in what way the question can be asked, right? How are you supposed to prepare yourself, and whatever is there in your economic survey, how that data or information needs to be used, right? See, it depends upon us. As I say, no information is a bad information. Okay? So the point here is you should know in what capacity that data, that information, or for that matter, that scheme has to be used, to what extent that scheme has to be prepared in detail, to what extent the schemes have to be prepared in a superfluous manner, as in whether that scheme is so important to be prepared in detail, or it can be done in a superfluous manner, as in it is related to what and largely that aspect. Is that very clear? So on this note, we will be starting with today's session. The takeaways of this session I will discuss as and when I am completing the topic with you. Is that very clear? Okay. So on this note, let's start with today's session. So this is the broad context which one should be aware of. See, every now and then, as in when we are preparing social infrastructure and development, you should know in what context the questions can be asked. Time and again, we have been talking about that social infrastructure is very important in context of the topic of demographic dividend. It is very important with respect to human capital formation. And in current context, it has become all the more important so as to ensure the development or to build the resilience of the vulnerable section, specifically in the backdrop of COVID-19 pandemic. Is that very clear? So if we have to understand the context in which this chapter can be discussed, these are the three broad contexts in which the topic can be discussed. Now, demographic dividend is no new concept. Half of you or more than half of you know exactly what is supposed to be done, right? But even then, let's very briefly visit that if we have to prepare the concept as in demographic dividend, and I will link it with whatever is there in your chapter. So first and foremost, this is the broad idea based on which any topic should be prepared. And if you've been regular spectator of my sessions, you would know that we have to first have an idea premise based on which we will be discussing a particular topic. This is how we proceed, right? First and foremost, you should have an idea what is the concept of demographic dividend. You should know the statistics, right? When the demographic dividend is expected to peak in context of India, then how it is creating the potential for economic growth. Is it sufficient just to have the population in the working age bracket? Will that guarantee guarantee economic growth? So obviously not. It only is creating the potential. It is not guaranteeing the economic growth. I am giving you a very layman understanding that how the topic or the concept should be approached. Is that clear? First and foremost, what do you mean by demographic dividend? As I think you guys know, it is the economic growth potential which is created, economic growth potential which is created due to the bulge in working age population. So when there is a bulge in the working age population, then it is referred as the economic growth potential which is created due to the bulge in the working age population is defined as the concept of demographic dividend. Is that clear? The statistic says that the demographic dividend in context of India is expected to peak in 2041, where approximately 59% of population will be in the age bracket 20 to 59 years. This is the statistics that we have as far as demographic dividend is concerned. So we have to, this window of opportunity is for a limited period of time. Our demographic dividend is going to peak in 2041. We do not have much years left. We have to reap the benefit of this potential which is being offered. Now the question which can arise in the minds of the student, that how the economic growth potential is created because of the bulge in the working age population. If you can see this, there are too many things which are written on the screen right now. Just try to understand. Working age 15 to 59. Demographic dividend expected to peak where 59% of your population will be in the age bracket 20 to 59. Economic growth potential will be created because of this bulge. So how it creates economic growth potential? It creates economic growth potential because of these factors. First of all, if there is a bulge in the working age group, that means your labor force is increasing, right? So the productivity of the economy will improve. There is increased supply of the labor force. Not only that, your working age population is expanding. That means if I look at the population structure like this, I hope this is visible for everyone, and I divide it into three parts: less than 15, 15 to 59 and 60 plus. So it is saying that the population is bulging in this age bracket. That means the number of independent population is more than the number of the dependent population. Again, it creates the potential for more savings. Your income will be more, your expenditure would be less, your savings will be more. And since working age is the prime period where everybody looks for saving, so automatically when more number of people are in the working age bracket, automatically the savings will increase. Not only that, when you have more money at your disposal, because earning members are more as compared to the consuming members, so obviously when you have more money at your disposal, there will be an increase in the domestic demand. Not only that, do you realize for economy to flourish or to sustain over a long period of time, it is not just the production which matters, the consumption is equally important, right? So basically with more money at your disposal, there would be increase in the domestic demand, and which will facilitate the process of consumption. Is this very clear? Not only that, now since the dependent population is less, right, the working age population is more, they are earning, they can take care of themselves, so this will create the potential or increase in fiscal space and divert its resources. So rather than taking care of the old age or the child, because anyway the working age people are taking care of them, so the government can divert the resources so as to invest in social infrastructure, for example health, education, skill, etc. Is that clear? Again, it is creating the potential for economic growth, because if you are investing in your social infrastructure, it will result into economic growth. Is that very clear? Because the potential and the productivity of your workforce will improve. So automatically that will be reflected in your economic growth. Is that clear? Not only this, it is saying that it creates the potential for urbanization, industrialization. Because if you have more number of people in the working age bracket, so basically they are the one who are seeking employment, they are in the working age group. So when they are seeking employment, they will create pressure on the government to further facilitate their economic activities, to generate employment for them, which will result into industrialization and urbanization, which is a sign of economic growth. Is that clear? It is a sign of development, it is a sign of progress. Is that clear? So when you are in the working age bracket, you are seeking employment, you would create pressure on your government to further facilitate their economic activities so as to create opportunities for them, which in turn will result into furthering your developing industrialization and urbanization. Is this clear? Again, it says that when there is a bulge in the working age population, that means that the dependent population is declining. That means fertility rate is declining. Fertility rate is declining. तभी ना यहाँ पे जो enter हो रहे हैं नए members in the young age group, they are declining, right? So fertility rate is declining. If fertility rate is declining, that means it is creating the potential for increase female labor force participation. So whenever there is decline in fertility rate, it is creating potential for female labor force participation. And as time and again it has been said that increased female labor force participation generates the potential for economic growth. Is that very clear? Okay. So again, decline in fertility rate will result into increase in female labor force participation, which will result into potential for economic growth. Not only this, with 65% of your population in the working age bracket, that is 15 to 59, it creates the potential for India to emerge as a global power. It creates the potential for India to emerge as a global power, right? So with 65% of population in the working age group, it is creating potential for India to emerge as a global power. So all these conditions which are mentioned on the screen, it displays that how demographic dividend creates the potential for economic growth. However, it only creates the potential. It does not guarantee economic growth. It only creates the potential. It does not guarantee economic growth. What I mean by this is, it depends upon what kind of population is entering the labor market. It also depends upon the job opportunities. So it depends what kind of quality of workforce is entering in the labor market or in that working age group, and do you have enough job opportunities to absorb the members who are entering into the working age bracket. And this has been reflected through this chapter. So quality of workforce deals with the health, it deals with the education, it deals with the skill. Job opportunity, it deals with the trends in employment. This is what are the elements of this chapter. Is that very clear? So demographic dividend only is an opportunity. It's a window of opportunity. If not reaped at an adequate speed, at an adequate time, the same dividend will turn into a disaster, right? So when you are preparing this chapter, the first question, demographic dividend, if not nurtured properly, will turn into a demographic disaster. Comment. Is that clear? So that's the first question. We will discuss the entire chapter through questions, right? So the first question is, if demographic dividend is not nurtured properly, it will turn into demographic disaster. You need to comment on that. Is that clear? The next question, based on what is there in the chapter, to what extent Indian government is prepared to reap the benefits of demographic dividend? Answer में थोड़ा सा change आ जाएगा, right? In the second question, you will be talking about what efforts the government has made so as to ensure quality of workforce and create job opportunities, right? So write down the next question. To what extent Indian government is prepared to reap the benefits of demographic dividend? Discuss. ये अभी हम देखेंगे as and when we are discussing the chapter. Is this very clear? So the first context is clear. The second context is with respect to human capital formation. Now, what I'm going to show it to you here is human capital index, but you don't have to prepare the index. My only concern was to throw some light on the concept of human capital, right? So what is human capital? So basically, in simple words, human capital refers to the knowledge, skill, and the health that you have acquired throughout your life so that you can realize your potential to be a productive asset for this country is known as human capital. So in simple words, whatever knowledge, whatever skills, whatever health that you have acquired over a period of time so that you can realize the potential to be a productive asset for this country, that is human capital. Is that clear? So any investment which is made in health, skill, job opportunities, education is nothing but an effort towards human capital formation. Is that clear? So this is where I want to draw your attention. Is that clear? But before that, just have a quick look. What is human capital? In simple words, as I said, it consists of the knowledge, skills, health which people accumulate over their life, which will enable them to realize their potential as the productive asset of the country. Is that clear? So this is what do you mean by human capital. Expenditure on education, expenditure on health, migration information or job training, anything, all of this is considered as an expenditure or an effort towards human capital formation. Is this very clear? Now, this concept of human capital formation has become important specifically in the backdrop of COVID-19. If overall you want to assess the impact of pandemic, do you realize, even if you do not have a specific data, do you realize that the impact on human capital formation, impact on potential of demographic dividend is very significant? Because most of the students, because of the lockdown, because of the pandemic, has been out of school, right? So there have been problem of out of school children. There have been problem of disruption of essential health services. There are a lot of students or lot of children who have missed out on their vaccination because the infrastructure was diverted toward handling the COVID patients. As a result, the essential health services were disrupted. So that is another challenge. Not only that, it has further aggravated the vulnerability of the marginalized section. Why? Because of pandemic, there are a lot of people who have been laid off. That is, they have lost their jobs, right? They were the ones who were working in informal sector because of lockdown, because of the restrictions which were being imposed, right? Strict lockdown to be very precise. So there are a lot of people who have lost on their jobs, right? So the income inequality has further aggravated. Right, the nutritional component of the children have been negatively impacted. The poverty had further worsened. तो ये किसी को आपको पढ़ाने की जरूरत नहीं है. The moment you think that you have to think with respect to knowledge, that is education, skill development, health, income opportunities, automatically you will realize that the pandemic effect has been severe with respect to these social aspects. Is that very clear for everyone? Now, my concern before I start that how we are going to relate to the topic is, one should know that it is very important for us to develop the human capital. The prospect of human capital is where I want you guys to focus your attention. And whenever you are talking about the prospect, one of the easiest way of highlighting the prospect is the prospect with respect to individual, the prospect with respect to the family, the prospect with respect to the society, the prospect with respect to the nation. It becomes easy to make your content discrete, as in to make it more presentable, more comprehensive, right? You might get a question, what do you mean by human capital? What are the prospects of human capital? To what extent India is prepared to develop its human capital, right? And what efforts the government of India has made towards human capital formation? You can get any set of questions. Is that clear? Now, when I talk about the prospect at the individual, family or societal level, it is quite evident. You can think of these points. I have just arranged these points at one place. That if you have to talk about prospect matlab, what positive implication it will have. So with respect to individual, if human capital formation happens, that is the person has knowledge, skill, health, automatically the social status of the individual will improve. The person will be able to avail the opportunities of social mobility, employment generation, the efficiency at the workplace would be high. They can lead the process of social change. It will give them satisfaction that they are able to act as a productive asset for their nation, right? So there can be many positive implications on an individual level. They will get the opportunity to become productive asset. It will ensure their cognitive development because of the satisfaction. There will be higher earning opportunities because of increased efficiency at the workplace, and definitely the opportunity for social mobility. At the family level, obviously the standard of living will improve. Not only that, it will have intergenerational benefits. Human capital is not something which is a very short-term plan. If you invest in human capital, the benefits are reaped over generations. So it will have intergenerational benefits. Not only that, society, at the societal level, if you are investing in human capital, it results into social cohesion because everybody is being provided the opportunity for social mobility. The standard of living is improving. So overall, it will result into social cohesion. It will result into strengthening of people's trust in the institution. As a result, there will be building of social capital. Is that very clear? In fact, a good amount of human capital is required to produce further human capital. Agar human capital nahi develop hoga, then from where you are going to get efficient teachers, from where you are going to get effective trainers. So human capital formation further generates human capital. So again, that is an advantage. And this is advantage at individual, family, societal level. There is large scale advantage at national level. अगर human capital formation होता है, वही तीन चीजें याद रखना, knowledge, skill, health. अगर ये होता है तो obviously innovation होंगे, inventions होंगे, sustainable growth होगी, poverty reduction होगा. You will be able to reap the benefits of demographic dividend because of your workforce will be qualitative. It will help in improving the status of nation at global platform because you not only have advantage in the quantitative manner but also qualitative manner. Quantitative manner as in 65% of your population is in the working age group, right? So not only the quantity is an advantage for you, in fact the quality will also be an advantage for you. Is that clear? And also, if you have higher human capital, they would be effectively able to utilize the physical capital. Is that clear? Now, to reap the benefits or to ensure development of human capital, what have been the initiatives? Ayushman Bharath, Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, National Education Policy, Atmanirbhar Bharat Yojana. घूम फिर के हम फिर वही chapter पे आ गए. The one which we are talking about. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? ठीक है? Now the third aspect, that is with respect to the resilience of the people with respect to this COVID situation. That is the third context. So the first context was demographic dividend. The second context was basically the human capital formation, and the third context is with respect to COVID-19 pandemic. So in last 2 years that we are suffering or facing this crisis of COVID pandemic, there has been a twin challenge. The twin challenge for the government has been to sustain the livelihood opportunity, but at the same time to save life. Is that clear? So there has been this twin challenge of balancing employment opportunities along with saving the lives of the people. In fact, this is COVID-19 pandemic which has highlighted the importance of a resilient social infrastructure. So whether it was health infrastructure, whether it was education, whether it was skill, whether it was employment opportunity, it was the vulnerability of the marginalized, they have been brought to forefront. So during this COVID-19 pandemic, there has been importance of robust and a resilient social infrastructure has been highlighted, quote unquote. So it has created the demand that why having a resilient social infrastructure is indispensable for the growth of any country. In fact, for the sustainability of any country. Is that very clear? So keeping that in mind, the India, which is characterized by the second largest population and which very soon will surpass China and become the most population nation in the world, has adopted a multi-pronged approach. So whether that approach was with respect to health, whether it was with respect to sustaining the learning outcomes, whether it was with respect to skilling, reskilling, whether it was livelihood opportunities, right? Everywhere India has intervened and has tried to overcome the challenges and also to overturn the adverse impact which is created by the pandemic, right? So we have to take note of this. So similarly, you might get a question that in the backdrop of COVID-19 pandemic, kindly or critically analyze the response of India. Okay, so that can also be one of the question, or at least one of the direction in which you can think about how you have to channelize your content. Is that very clear? So in such questions, that how it has been able to, so you can talk about with respect to health response, you can talk about education, skill development, employment opportunities, okay, or the packages or the initiatives which have been taken, which is considered important to mitigate the negative impact of the pandemic. Now, with respect to the health response, that is the first thing that we are talking about. So with respect to health response, again, India has taken a multi-pronged approach. So whether it was restrictions, whether it was testing, whether it was capacity building, or the most significant, the vaccination drive. So there can be altogether a separate question with respect to the vaccination strategy of India. Is that very clear? Okay. So is the health response 4 aspects clear? With respect to response, okay, restrictions, with respect to capacity building, with respect to testing, appropriate behavior, manufacturing, with respect to vaccination drive. It has been a multi-pronged approach, right? Okay, it's a multi-dimensional approach. We are just not focusing on how to reduce the transmission. At the same time, we are generating awareness. At the same time, we are providing vaccines to act as a shield against the COVID infection. Not only that, we are also manufacturing all the necessary kits which are required to safeguard yourself against the infection. So it has been a multi-pronged approach. Very quickly, the measures which have been taken to break the transmission, the chain of transmission, so whether it was quarantine facilities, whether it was isolation, contact tracing, okay, or testing of the suspect cases and high risk contact, etc. You don't have to write everything in case the question comes. So just what are there were efforts taken to break the chain of transmission. For example, contact tracing, quarantine facility, or for that matter, buffer zone, containment zone, etc. Okay. Similarly, the testing capacity in the country has increased exponentially. So the test for COVID-19, basically it was that the tests were made free of cost at the government centers. Okay, na? So the testing capacity has significantly increased. Similarly, manufacturing capacity, चाहे वेंटिलेटर की हो, N95 मास्क की हो, PPE किट्स की हो, सैनिटाइजर्स की हो, that was also significantly increased. इसमें कुछ भी पढ़ाने का नहीं है, ये अगर नहीं भी देते तो आप खुद भी लिख लेते, ठीक है. Then massive infrastructure, whether it was medical oxygen, whether it was ICU beds, whether it was isolation beds, so there was massive ramp up in the infrastructure facilities as well. However, the most effective aspect of this fight against COVID-19 has been the production and the supply of the COVID vaccines, which has acted as a shield against this infection. So again, you might get a separate question with respect to the COVID vaccination strategy. Is that clear? So with respect to COVID vaccination strategy, it has been said that India's vaccination program has been one of the world's largest vaccination program. In fact, under this liberalized pricing and accelerated vaccination strategy, it was that government was procuring, the central government, as far as the state, UT, private sector was also allowed to procure these vaccines directly from the manufacturer. So initially क्या हो रहा था, central government was procuring 50% and remaining 50% were procured by the state, UT as well as the private sector. However, after June 2021, what happened that the central government started procuring 75% of the vaccines which were being manufactured, and after that, and out of which the state and UTs were provided the vaccination or the vaccines free of cost. However, the remaining was being procured by the private sector. So initially it was that the state, private as well as union territory hospitals were allowed to procure vaccine directly from the manufacturers. However, after June 2021, Government of India was procuring 75% of the vaccine production and was providing it free of cost to the state as well as the union territories. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? Now, with respect to the vaccine strategy, if I talk about, so this is the multi-dimensional aspect of the vaccine strategy. So whether it is with respect to the availability of the vaccine or the pricing equity of the vaccine or vaccine hesitancy or the technological aspect of this, progress as well as the coverage. So if you get a direct question that in the backdrop of India having one of the largest vaccination program, briefly discuss India's vaccine strategy. Write down, in the backdrop of India having one of the largest vaccination program, briefly discuss the vaccine strategy. Now, if such question comes, this is how you can answer. This is how you can answer. Right? So the first and foremost, if I talk about the availability of the vaccines, बहुत छोटा है, ठीक है, that India had manufactured 2 made in India COVID vaccines. One is Covaxin and other is Covishield. Not only they have been the manufacturer of these vaccines, they have also allowed the import of COVID-19 vaccines such as Sputnik, Moderna, recombinant, basically to meet the large demand, being the second most populous nation of the world. So availability of the vaccine में कोई कमी नहीं थी. Approximately 157 crore doses has been administered, obviously combining both the first and the second dose. So it is approximately 157 crore doses. तो कोई problem नहीं थी as far as availability of vaccine is concerned, because domestic manufacturing भी थी. Along with that, the import was also being allowed. Now, with respect to pricing and equity, the best thing was that at COVID vaccination centers, the government COVID vaccination centers, these vaccines were provided free of cost. In fact, 35,000 crore for procurement under this vaccination program was being allocated. And the best thing, the most highlighting factor about the distribution of COVID vaccine was that it was done without any discrimination. In fact, out of the total doses which were being administered, 49% has been administered to females and 70% has been administered in the rural areas. Is that very clear? At the COVID vaccination centers. Now, you do not have to prepare all the data, but this is this is some data which can be easily remembered, that 50% was administered to women and 70% was administered to CVCs, that is COVID vaccination centers, which were located in rural areas. So this is something which can be remembered, right? It's a part of vaccination strategy. You can get a separate question on that. Now, with respect to vaccine hesitancy, I have added certain elements to it to give you a continuity or the continuum in the understanding. There was a study which was published by Lancet, which said that India is highest or has ranked highest among the countries where people believe that vaccines are effective, right? So 84.26% of the population believe that vaccine is effective. That means problem of vaccine hesitancy was not in context of India. Why? Because government has made very significant effort. You might get a question, what do you mean by vaccine hesitancy? What is the status of India with respect to vaccine hesitancy? What efforts Indian government has made to tackle the challenge of vaccine hesitancy? Is that clear? So first and foremost, what is or what do you mean by vaccine hesitancy? So according to WHO, it is defined as a reluctance or refusal to vaccinate despite the availability of the vaccines, right? So what do you mean by vaccine hesitancy? So WHO says that you are reluctant or you are refusing to get yourself vaccinated despite the availability of the vaccine. That is one point. Second thing is that why do vaccine hesitancy happens? This concept of hesitancy is influenced by either complacency or convenience or confidence. Is that clear? Now, it is being said, according to WHO, vaccine hesitancy has emerged as one of the top 10 global threats in context of the world, as in health threats. So one of the top 10 global health threats, vaccine hesitancy is one among them. But the good thing in context of India is that 84.26% people believe that vaccines are effective, and that was the study which was published by Lancet. Now, what steps the government has taken as far as to reduce vaccine hesitancy? So these are the various efforts which have been taken, whether it was with respect to awareness, चाहे वो रेडियो जॉकी हो, मीडिया चैनल हो, आर्टिकल्स बाय आइडेंटिफाइड एक्सपर्ट्स हो, चाहे वो डिसएमिनेशन ऑफ फैक्ट चेक वीडियोस हो. These fact check videos are very important to basically disperse or bust the myths or the rumors which are existing in context of vaccines. Not only that, in fact, house to house mobilization activity was also taken place. There was a campaign, Har Ghar Dastak. It was basically to identify those who have missed their vaccine doses. So through house to house mobilization activity. Not only that, vaccines were also administered to the beneficiaries at their homes via vaccination toli. Or further to encourage the proactive participation, there was interstate competition with respect to the vaccination drives. Then social media was also used to disperse any kind of anti-vaccine rumors which are existing. Similarly, charismatic personalities have also lent their voice to this cause of vaccine hesitancy. As a result, overall, Indian government has fared quite well, and that is quite evident from the report of Lancet study. Similarly, another aspect of vaccine strategy has been technologically driven. So whether it was Arogya Setu map, which was basically this app was there to enable the people to assess to what extent they are vulnerable to contract the infection, or they are vulnerable or they are at risk to contract COVID-19 infection. Similarly, COVID 2.0. It is a unique digital platform which was there to support real-time vaccination activities. So whether it was registration of vaccine, whether it was the stock, whether it was the vaccination certificate, whether it was the status of beneficiaries with respect to vaccine or the actual vaccination process. So it was a digital platform which was there with respect to real-time vaccination activities. So within technology, you can make or give examples of CoWIN app, or you can give example of Arogya Setu. Then, with respect to progress and coverage overall, I have already told you approximately 157 crore doses of COVID-19 vaccine have been administered. You don't have to get into this detailing. Is that clear? Overall एक understanding है. अगर coverage की बात करें तो in this age bracket 60% coverage, 45 to 59 25% and 60 years it is 15%. Is this clear? So अगर overall 100% coverage जो ये 157 crore doses की बात कर रहे हैं, so within that 60% has been administered in this age bracket, 25% in 45 to 59 and remaining 15% in 60% and 60 years and above. ये एक डायग्राम आपके उसमें दे रखा है. Is that very clear? So you might get a question on demographic dividend, you might get a question on human capital formation, you might get a question with respect to Indian government's response to the COVID pandemic, you might get a question with respect to vaccination strategy. So till here, 4 things that we have talked about. There were other efforts also which were being made. For example, approximately 71 crore COVID tests were being conducted via government or the private laboratories, so laboratory network. Another aspect was the medical oxygen plants. Ye prelims mein you might get that which of the following statement is true. So which organization was entrusted with the task of installing and commissioning these medical oxygen plants in the hospitals? It was DRDO. From where the funds have been provided? PM CARE fund. It is based on what technology? It is based on the spin-off technology of on-board oxygen generation system of India's indigenous fighter aircraft Tejas. Is that clear? So you might get anything of this sort. So in such cases, थोड़ा सा ध्यान इसीलिए मैंने हाईलाइट करके दिया है कि जब आप ये पीपीटीज रिवाइज करोगे, जस्ट द हाईलाइटेड पोर्शन, नॉट इवन 1 minute वुड बी रिक्वायर्ड टू रीड 1 पीपीटी. ठीक है, सो यू जस्ट हैव टू ग्लांस थ्रू कि इट्स डीआरडीओ through PM CARE funds, and finally it is based on the spin-off technology, and this technology is that of India's indigenous fighter aircraft Tejas. Is this clear? Similarly, with respect to OxyCare system, DRDO has developed SpO2 based oxygen cylinder controller based medical oxygen cylinders. It will provide oxygen to the COVID-19 patients according to their SpO2 level. So the oxygen would not be wasted. Optimum utilization would take place. So already we had the problem of dearth of oxygen cylinders. So this will ensure optimum utilization because this would ensure oxygen is provided according to the SpO2 level of the patients. Is that very clear? So this has been the efforts which the government has made as far as vaccination or overall the COVID response is concerned. Is this clear? Similarly, they have also introduced anti-COVID drug. So who have basically DCGI, that is Drug Controller General of India, has granted the permission of using 2-DG, that is the 2-deoxy-D-glucose drug as an adjunct therapy in moderate to severe COVID-19 patients. It is coming in the form of a powder in a sachet which is taken orally by dissolving it in the water. Is that clear? So basically, who has granted the permission? It is Drug Controller General of India. With respect to what? That is 2-DG. What 2-DG stands for? It is deoxy-D-glucose drug, and it is to be administered in moderate to severe COVID-19 patients. Is this very clear? Now, once we have talked about the vaccination strategy and everything, the next response is, see, vaccination कह लो या फिर response with respect to COVID-19 कह लो, it was an immediate response which was being made. Do you realize this? So if I am talking about the vaccine, if I am talking about the contract tracing, if I am talking about the manufacturing of PPE kits and sanitizer and everything, it was the immediate response which has been made with respect to this pandemic, right? But that is for the time being. In a long run, one has realized that your education system infrastructure needs to be robust. Your health infrastructure needs to be robust so that your country should also be prepared for the future pandemic or the crisis situation. So in that context, what has been the trend with respect to the social sector expenditure? So if you talk about the expenditure in the social services, in general as a percentage of GDP. So overall expenditure on social services 2021-22 has been 8.6% of your GDP. यहां पे दो चीजें ध्यान में रखनी है, एजुकेशन पे कितना एक्सपेंडिचर है 3.1% ऑफ जीडीपी, हेल्थ पे कितना एक्सपेंडिचर है 2.1% ऑफ योर जीडीपी. हेल्थ एक्सपेंडिचर हैज इंप्रूव्ड एंड सेम गोज फॉर एजुकेशनल एक्सपेंडिचर. इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? Is it making sense? ठीक है. So from 2019, if I'm comparing pre-pandemic to the post-pandemic, so the educational expenditure has increased, and as far as health is concerned, it has significantly increased. National Health Policy basically has said in 2017, जब National Health Policy was put forward, it said that you have to keep the target of health expenditure to 2.5% of your GDP. Is that very clear? So it is 2.1% and we have to improve it to 2.5%. Is that very clear? ठीक है. Then if I talk about the percentage of the total expenditure, so the expenditure on social services, if you notice, in past 5 years have been round about 25% of the total expenditure has been on the social services. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? भैया, कैन आई रिक्वेस्ट यू ऑफ नॉट राइटिंग एनीथिंग, इट इज वेरी डिस्ट्रैक्टिंग. आप प्लीज इस पे लिखना बंद करोगे? आई एम सो सॉरी बट दिस इज वेरी डिस्ट्रैक्टिंग. सो 25% ऑफ योर टोटल एक्सपेंडिचर has been on the social services, right, which has now increased it to 26.6%. Is it making sense? ठीक है. What social services consist of? So social services is basically including all these aspects. Then what with respect to expenditure on education, with respect to expenditure on health. So education constitutes education, sports, art and culture, and health constitutes the medical public health, family welfare, water supply and sanitation. सोशल सर्विसेज इज अ ब्रॉड एस्पेक्ट. अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग के लिए पता होना चाहिए, बहुत डिटेल में जाके याद करने की जरूरत नहीं है, बट हाँ, जस्ट ग्लांस थ्रू इट. सो वेदर इट इज वाटर सप्लाई, सैनिटेशन, हाउसिंग, वेलफेयर ऑफ SC, ST, OBCs, न्यूट्रिशन, social security, relief on account of natural calamities, all of that constitutes the part of social services. Is that clear? So when we talk about expenditure on education, then education is education, sports, art and culture. Expenditure on health, it is family welfare, water supply, sanitation, medication or the public health. Is this clear? Now the first topic that we have to take up, as in first तो नहीं है, one of the topic education, health, skill, employment. So the first topic is education. Now before I start with this, I need to tell you few things. We do not have the current data. Economic survey doesn't provide us. The economic survey has provided us data sourced from UDICE Plus, right? And this UDICE Plus has a lag of 1 year. So the data that we have is that of 2019 and 20, right? That is pre-pandemic level. So with respect to that, चाहे school infrastructure हो, enrollment हो, school dropout हो, we have the data with respect to pre-pandemic phase. And in the pandemic situation, they have referred to the data which is being provided by the Asar report, that is annual status of education report. But then they themselves have mentioned in the economic survey that they do not have any aspect to corroborate to the data which is being provided by Asar report. Why? And most importantly, if we'll see in some time, if we talk about Asar report, it is a rural survey. It is a household based survey. It is just based on basic skills, reading and mathematics. So it is not a very comprehensive survey, but still it gives us enough information to at least have a broad understanding that what has been the impact on education in rural areas during pandemic period. Is this very clear for everyone? बट बिफोर वी स्टार्ट नाउ, अब इतने से डेटा में क्या तो क्वेश्चन बनेगा और क्या हम पढ़ेंगे. सो आई एम गिविंग यू अ ब्रॉड आइडिया. आई विल प्रोवाइड यू दीज PPTs. यू कैन गो थ्रू these PPTs in detail. I am just giving you an idea how are you supposed to prepare. Now अगर education आता है, ठीक है, so first and foremost you should have an understanding what do you mean by a quality education. First, you should know what is the significance of quality education. You should know what are the challenges with respect to school education and what needs to be done. then we can make use of the data which is being provided by economic survey. सिर्फ डेटा पढ़ लेने से कोई फायदा नहीं होगा. कहां लिख कर आओगे डेटा? प्रीलिम्स में कोई ये तो पूछेगा नहीं कि कितने बच्चे गए, कितने निकले, क्या हुआ, ये तो कोई भी नहीं पूछना आपसे. ठीक है, क्वेश्चन बनेगा एजुकेशन पे और उसमें यूज करने के लिए यू कैन मेक यूज ऑफ द डेटा एंड सोर्स वुड बी इकोनॉमिक सर्वे. इज दैट क्लियर? फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट, you need to have an understanding that what is a good quality education in case the question comes with respect to education. Kuch nahi, hardly 2 minutes, just go through it. Do you realize there is a quotation which says there is no tool of empowerment better than the education, right? So if you educate your citizens, there is no better tool of empowerment than providing them education. But there is a disclaimer: your education needs to be good, it needs to be qualitative, right? So there should be a well-designed curriculum, there should be value-based education, there should be efficient, educated, trained, motivated teachers, the infrastructure should be effective, and safe and secured learning environment should be there. These are the 5 basic components of a good qualitative education. So if you ever get a question with respect to education and you have to discuss what kind of education you're looking for, so these are the broad parameters. There should be a good curriculum, there should be value-based ethical education system, there should be good infrastructure facilities, safe secured learning environment होना चाहिए. आपके teachers not only trained होने चाहिए but motivated होने चाहिए to improve the learning outcomes of the students. What is the significance of quality education? Do you really think that just education provide karake you are going to benefit only that individual? Absolutely not. If you are able to ensure qualitative education, it will enable us in achieving sustainable development goals. That's the first criteria. Not only that, it is very crucial, a qualitative education, specifically in the backdrop of national education policy, which for the very first time has highlighted the role of early childhood care and education, that is the preschool. So again, it is laying the emphasis that the development of the child crucially depends upon what kind of early childhood care and education is being provided to the children. So the significance of quality education is it will enable us to achieve sustainable development goals. Not only that, it will ensure crucial development of a child by providing or the provision of ECCE, that is early childhood care and education. Not only that, it will reduce the dropout. If your learning is effective, if your pedagogy is effective, if your teachers are motivated, if your content is relevant, right? So automatically the dropouts will reduce. Not only that, if you are educated, if you are skilled, you have education which is relevant to the demands of the market, obviously the employment opportunities will improve. Not only that, your productivity at the workplace will improve. So overall, it will result into your empowerment. Is that very clear? Similarly, if there is qualitative education, overall the resilience of the vulnerable sections will improve. Good qualitative education creates avenues for social mobility. It reduces inequality. It ensures gender equality. It will foster tolerance. It will ensure peace and harmony in the society. So if you look at the significance of the quality education, it is quite broad. So in this context, education automatically becomes important, right? So it is the quality education which needs to be provided, and why it needs to be provided, that is the significance. Again, you can get a question of the prospects with respect to significant education. However, there are certain challenges. There are certain challenges with respect to the education system. So the challenges is inadequate attention is being paid to the quality of the education. हम सिर्फ एजुकेट कर रहे हैं, वी आर जस्ट फोकसिंग ऑन लिटरेसी, वी आर एक्चुअली नॉट फोकसिंग ऑन द क्वालिटी ऑफ द एजुकेशन. इवन द टीचिंग पेडागॉगी इज वेरी ऑब्सोलीट. इट इज बेस्ड ऑन रोट बेस्ड लर्निंग, वन साइज फिट ऑल अप्रोच. एक अप्रोच है, वी डू नॉट टेक इन टू कंसिडरेशन द इंडिविजुअल कैरेक्टर ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स. अनहेल्दी कॉम्पिटिशन प्रमोट करते हैं बाय फोकसिंग ऑन ग्रेड सिस्टम, which otherwise has a very negative impact on the cognitive development of the child. So the stress, mental aspect is negatively impacted. then the assessment process is also not holistic. इसीलिए national education policy has talked about 360-degree assessment process in which peer-to-peer assessment, teacher assessment, self-assessment, every kind of assessment would be ensured. Is that clear? Then best thing is, क्यों ये मैं पढ़ा रही हूं, अभी तुमको 5 मिनट में समझ आएगा कि असर रिपोर्ट ने ये बोला है कि रूरल एरियाज में द मैक्सिमम चिल्ड्रन हैज शिफ्टेड फ्रॉम प्राइवेट टू गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स, राइट? बिकॉज कोई बहुत सारे रीजन है भाई, कॉस्ट है और माइग्रेंट वापस चले गए हैं. देयर आर वेरियस फैक्टर्स व्हाई स्टूडेंट्स हैव शिफ्टेड फ्रॉम प्राइवेट टू गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स. एक तो गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट एजुकेशन दे रहे हैं और अब इकोनॉमिक डिस्ट्रेस आ गया है. बट प्रॉब्लम है कि गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स का द क्वालिटी इज वेरी बैड, बिकॉज इन गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स पहली बात तो टीचर्स हैं नहीं, न ट्रेंड है न मोटिवेटेड है, एंड मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंटली द टीचर्स आर engaged in the non-teaching work. It says only 19% of the teachers hour is spent on teaching. Rest 81% is spent on non-teaching activities. सर्वे कर लो, इलेक्शन में ड्यूटी दे लो, यही सारे काम वो करते रहते हैं. So that has become further challenge. फिर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर मिसिंग है, चाहे पावर हो, चाहे इंटरनेट हो, चाहे कंप्यूटर लैब्स हो, चाहे ड्रिंकिंग वाटर हो, टॉयलेट फैसिलिटीज हो, ऑल ऑफ दैट इज मिसिंग. क्वालिफाइड टीचर्स नहीं है, स्पेसिफिकली इन कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स. The focus is not there on vocational training. This focus is not there on life skills. So there is a gap between what is being taught and what is being required in the labor market or in the society in general. Is that very clear for everyone? So this is the larger issue which is existing with respect to the education system. So overall, what needs to be done? देखो, जब भी आप कोई चीज पढ़ते हो, जस्ट फॉर योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग, हम ऐसे ही पढ़ते हैं ना कि व्हाट आर द कैरेक्टरिस्टिक ऑफ दैट इज क्वालिटी एजुकेशन क्या है, व्हाट आर द प्रोस्पेक्ट्स, व्हाट आर द चैलेंजेस, व्हाट शुड बी द वे फॉरवर्ड एंड व्हाट इज द स्टैटिस्टिक्स. ओनली द स्टैटिस्टिकल कंपोनेंट इज प्रोवाइडेड बाय इकोनॉमिक सर्वे. तो द पॉइंट हियर इज उस स्टैटिस्टिकल कंपोनेंट का क्या करेंगे, इसीलिए आई एम ट्राइंग टू गिव यू दिस ब्रॉड अंडरस्टैंडिंग वेयर दो स्टैटिस्टिकल कंपोनेंट्स कैन बी यूज्ड. Is that clear? So if you look at the way forward, so effective sufficient infrastructure, academic monitoring and data backed review. Basically कहने का मतलब है that data is the new oil. So you should collect the data to identify that to what extent your policies have been effective and where are the loopholes and how it needs to be plugged in. So everything can be provided through this data backed review. Is that clear? Then proper accreditation assessment system should be there so as to ensure good qualitative education. Similarly, incentives provide karao private sector ko to invest in the public schools. One-on-one tutoring should be encouraged so as to enhance the learning. Then experiential learning. Again, this term is being borrowed from National Education Policy, which says hands-on learning. Arts integrated learning, sports integrated learning, experiential learning, that if you have to learn about animals, you should take kids to zoo. So that is nothing but experiential learning. One of the example, learning through experiences. Is that clear? Then technology driven pedagogy, creative, interactive, interesting, engaging learning should be promoted. Most importantly, change the attitude towards teaching profession, make it more lucrative, so that you can attract the best minds of the society. Everybody wants to be an engineer, they want to be a doctor, they want to be IAS. Nobody wants to be a teacher, right? So that is the thing. Is this very clear? Okay. So overall, that has to be the, you can add more points. This is just to give you, see, whether you like it or not, this is a problem with my teaching, that until and unless I do not give the premise, I cannot arrive at, I cannot convince myself just to give you the data. That's just not happening. So if I take some time of yours in today's lecture, please just be patient. Trust me, there are a lot of takeaways, right? You must be wondering कि ये सब तो कुछ है नहीं, इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में हम क्यों ही डिस्कस कर रहे हैं? इसीलिए डिस्कस कर रहे हैं क्योंकि नहीं है. Now again, if you can see, the data that we have is pre-pandemic space. So this is the data that is being provided. So whether it is infrastructure, whether it is enrollment, whether it is dropout. So this is how the data looks like. We have discussed what is the characteristic feature of quality education. We have talked about what is the significance, challenges, way forward. Now we have to talk about the infrastructure. So if you look at it, primary, upper primary, that is till 8th standard, the infrastructure in fact has declined. However, secondary, senior secondary, college, university, the infrastructure has increased. But this is pre-pandemic. ये कोई भी data you do not have to learn. Absolutely no. You just need to know क्या बढ़ा है और क्या घटा है, बस. With respect to basic facilities, अगर percentage में बात करें, that is also pre-pandemic. So whether it is the girls' toilet, boys' toilet, hand wash facilities, if you can see the red bar, every facility, the basic facilities in the pre-pandemic phase has improved. So whether it is medical checkup, electricity, computer, internet, overall there has been increase in the facilities in the pre-pandemic stage. सिर्फ आपको इतना याद रखना है. None of the data has to be prepared. Wherever the data is supposed to be prepared, I will keep telling you. Remember the doses administer करी तो 49% were women, 70% in the rural area. That is what I was expecting you to remember. Demographic dividend is peaking in 2041. That data you should remember. तो कुछ specific data हैं which one should remember. Then pupil teacher ratio, मतलब number of let's say one teacher on how many number of students. So that is the pupil teacher ratio. जितना ये कम होगा उतना it is signaling that there has been an improvement in the quality of education. So if the pupil teacher ratio is declining, that means it is showing improvement in the quality of education. So whether it is primary, upper primary, secondary or higher secondary, in all the four you can see pupil teacher ratio has declined. Is that clear? Now you have, for every 26 children you have one teacher at primary level. For every 18 children you have one teacher at upper primary level. Similarly so on. Is that very clear? Okay. Overall it is said that whenever there is improvement in the infrastructure, then automatically there is an improvement in the enrollment and reduction in the dropouts. Now, before we talk about the enrollment, you should have an understanding what is gross enrollment ratio and why sometimes gross enrollment ratio is more than 100%. So, gross enrollment ratio clearly says total enrollment which has happened in a particular level of school education regardless of the age. You can be more than the age, you can be underage also. So total enrollment which has happened at a particular level of education regardless of the age, expressed as a percentage of the population in the official age group of that corresponding level of education. For example, अगर ग्रॉस एनरोलमेंट रेशियो की बात करें तो इट इज अ परसेंटेज. परसेंटेज कितना है, किस चीज का है? नंबर ऑफ चिल्ड्रन हु आर एनरोल्ड, लेट अस से एट प्राइमरी लेवल, सो दैट इज 1st to 5th स्टैंडर्ड, तो दैट मीन्स 6 to 10 एज ग्रुप. तो कितने बच्चे एनरोल हुए इररिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ देयर एज in this 1 to 5th standard? It is the percentage of actual number of children in the age bracket 6 to 10. So let us say in the age bracket 6 to 10 there were 100 kids. However, in 1st to 5th standard the enrollment has been 110. ये कैसे possible है? How the percentage can be more than 100? It can be more than 100. Why? Because sometimes the children who are getting enrolled are either underage or they are overage. तो जो denominator है it is with respect to the age corresponding to that educational level. However, जो numerator है it is the number of students who have enrolled in that level of education irrespective of their age. Is that very clear? इसीलिए sometimes gross enrollment ratio can be more than 100%. Is this very clear for everyone? Is it making sense? If you don't understand this is, ऐसे मतलब कोई डाउट होना नहीं चाहिए. परसेंटेज में होता है, न्यूमरेटर में कितने बच्चों ने एनरोल किया उस लेवल ऑफ एजुकेशन में, लेट अस से 1st to 5th स्टैंडर्ड प्राइमरी लेवल इररिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ देयर एज. डिनोमिनेटर इज टोटल नंबर ऑफ चिल्ड्रन इन द एज 6 to 10. सो ओवरऑल अगर आप एनरोलमेंट रेशियोज देख रहे हो तो प्राइमरी लेवल में भी विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू गर्ल बॉय ओवरऑल देयर हैज बीन इंक्रीज एज कंपेयर टू द प्रीवियस ईयर. Similarly, upper primary level में भी there has been an increase corresponding to the previous year. बस कुछ भी याद नहीं करना है, बस हाँ कंफ्यूजन हो सकता था कि 100 से ज्यादा कैसे हो सकता है, तो हमने बता दिया 100% से ज्यादा कैसे हो सकता है. सिमिलरली सेकेंडरी लेवल अगर आप कंपेयर करो प्रीवियस ईयर से, सो इन 2019-20 देयर हैज बीन एन इंक्रीज, चाहे बॉयज हो, गर्ल्स हो या ओवरऑल हो. What is dropout rate? Dropout rate is the proportion of the students from a cohort, कोई भी cohort हो सकता है, 15 to 16 हो सकता है, 10 to 12 हो सकता है, whichever cohort, enrolled at a given level at a given school year, who are no longer enrolled in any grade in the following school year. भाई हो सकता है ना जंप कर ली हो क्लास, हो सकता है डिटेन हो गए हो उसी क्लास में, लेकिन हमने ये देखा कि फॉलोइंग स्कूल ईयर में दे आर नॉट एनरोल्ड इन एनी ग्रेड, दैट मीन्स दे हैव ड्रॉप्ड आउट. So the proportion of children from a cohort who were enrolled at a given level in a given year are no longer enrolled in any grade in the following year. That means they have dropped out. So the government has taken various efforts to improve the enrollment, to reduce the dropouts and to improve the infrastructure. So चाहे वो समग्र शिक्षा अभियान हो, सर्व शिक्षा अभियान हो, RTE Act हो, मिड डे मील हो, कस्तूरबा गांधी बालिका विद्यालय हो, there are innumerable schemes, you name it and you have it. Vidyanjali Portal हो, there have been lot many efforts which have been made. दीक्षा पोर्टल हो, ठीक है. ओवरऑल ड्रॉपआउट्स की बात करें तो यू कैन सी एज कंपेयर टू 2018-19, 2019-20 में चाहे गर्ल्स हो, चाहे बॉयज हो, चाहे ओवरऑल हो, द ड्रॉपआउट एट प्राइमरी लेवल हैज डिक्लाइंड. द ड्रॉपआउट्स एट अपर प्राइमरी लेवल हैज ऑल्सो डिक्लाइंड. Similarly, the dropout at secondary level has also declined. Overall, 2018-19 में 17.9 था percent और अब it has been reduced to 16.07%. So overall there has been a decline in the dropout. And what have been the reasons for improvement in enrollment, for improvement in infrastructure and for reduction in dropout? तो अगर overall देखा जाए तो 3 parameters थे जो इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में मेंशन थे: your infrastructure, your enrollment and your dropout. Dropouts have reduced at all levels of school education, infrastructure has improved and enrollment has improved. But the challenge is all this data belongs to pre-pandemic phase, right? So irrespective of this data, ऐसा तो है नहीं कि यूनिवर्सलाइजेशन हो गया हो एनरोलमेंट का, या ड्रॉपआउट्स एकदम खत्म हो गए हो, या लर्निंग आउटकम एकदम इंप्रूव हो गया हो, या सोशल इनइक्विटीज एग्जिस्ट नहीं करती हो. तो इसीलिए हमने डिस्कस किया था कि व्हाट इज क्वालिटेटिव एजुकेशन, प्रोस्पेक्ट, challenges and what should be the way forward. However, pandemic has a significant impact, but since we did not have the data, so we are depending upon the data which is provided by the Asar report, that is annual status of education report. So you should have an understanding. This can be a potential question for your prelims. Which of the following statement is true with respect to the Asar report? तो एक idea होना चाहिए that it is published by Pratham NGO. It is a citizen-led survey. It is a household survey. 2005 से every year it is happening. ठीक है, it is one-on-one assessment survey. It is basically taking into consideration the basic skills, that is reading, mathematics, and it includes both in-school children as well as out-of-school children. Is that very clear? And it is limited to rural areas. So this is with respect to Asar report. ठीक है. Now, what is the finding of the report? So, overall finding of Asar survey says that enrollment in this age bracket 15 to 16 has improved. बस इतनी लाइन याद रखनी है. तो जो मैंने हाईलाइट कर रखा है बस उतना you have to remember that enrollment in this age bracket 15 to 16 has improved. Second, enrollment in this age bracket, that is 6 to 14. So number of non-enrolled children has increased to 4.6%. मतलब जो currently enrolled नहीं है in the age bracket 6 to 14, it has increased to 4.6%. The enrollment decline, मतलब decline in enrollment has been maximum in the younger age group, that is 7 to 10 years. The decline in enrollment for younger boys was higher than the girls. Is that very clear? So overall 15 to 16 में enrollment has improved. Out of or non-enrolled children in the age bracket 6 to 14 has increased to 4.6%. The maximum decline in enrollment has been in the younger age bracket, that is 7 to 10, within which among boys it is more than the girls. So this is what you have to remember. The digital divide has further worsened the equity in the access to the education. It says that almost 2/3 people have access to smartphones, that is 67.6%. However, within that only 27% people are being used or able to use smartphones for their study. So the problem is that in the backdrop of pandemic, this digital divide has further worsened whatever achievements we had made with respect to the equity in the accessibility to the education. First, you do not have the smartphones. Even if you have the smartphones, the young kids are not able to use it. Even if you are not in that young age bracket, you do not get the phone to use it for your studies. Then you have problem with internet connectivity. You cannot afford internet connection. So there are many issues which are existing, and because of digital divide, whether it is in context of literacy, digital literacy, or it is in context of availability of the infrastructure, or it is in context of network or internet connection, there have been various issues which has further exacerbated, that is worsened the equity in access to education. These are nothing but the findings. Another finding of Asar report says, which I have mentioned, that during the pandemic in the rural areas, the children in all the three age group, that is upper, primary, secondary, they have moved from private to the government schools. Now, what are the possible factors for this shift? So it can be obviously low cost private schools have been shut down, financial distress hai, government facilities free hai, migrating back to college, exodus of migrants, and high fees hai private schools ki. So there are different factors which has facilitated this shift from private to government schools in the rural areas, and this has been the finding of the Asar report. Now the challenge, if this trend continues, your public schools, their infrastructure, teachers, the quality of teachers, availability of infrastructure, everything needs to be worked upon so that you can absorb the children. Is this very clear? And you can provide them qualitative education. Is this very clear? Now, ऐसा तो है नहीं that your government has not made any effort to minimize the negative impact of pandemic on the education. So government has made significant efforts. सिर्फ जो येलो लाइन से मार्क्ड है, all you need to do is just go through it. बहुत ही बेसिक उसमें that they have tried to provide all the enrolled children the textbooks for their current grade. They have also received learning materials, especially the kids where the schools have reopened. To overcome the challenge of digital divide, the guidance have been provided by the teachers. Online digital content has been provided through TV and radios. Tara interactive chatbot has been created. Activity-based learning has been promoted. So whether it is with respect to textbooks, whether it is with respect to learning material, whether it is with respect to digital divide, the government has made efforts. Not only this, the effort has been made, for example, PM E-Vidya. Okay. Now, what is PM E-Vidya? There can be a separate question. There can be a question. Write down. Briefly discuss the initiatives taken by the government. Briefly discuss the initiatives taken by the government in context of school education during the pandemic. Briefly discuss the initiatives taken by the government with respect to school education during the pandemic. So there have been certain efforts which have been made by the government with respect to the education system. अब आपको क्या करना है, देखो अब मैं थोड़ा जल्दी बताऊंगी कि कैसे करना है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल ये स्कीम्स जितनी भी हैं, बिकॉज दिस इंटायर इकोनॉमिक सर्वे, दिस चैप्टर इज ओनली कंसिस्टिंग ऑफ स्कीम्स, राइट. नाउ द चैलेंज इज दैट हाउ आर वी सपोज एंड इन व्हाट कैपेसिटी द स्कीम्स हैव टू बी प्रिपेयर्ड. इन केस देयर इज सम फ्लैगशिप स्कीम, आई विल ऑलरेडी टेल यू टू डिस्कस और टू प्रिपेयर दैट स्कीम इन डिटेल. आप स्कीम्स के लिए एक सेपरेट डॉक्यूमेंट कैन बी क्रिएटेड एंड राइट बिफोर योर PT 365, as in whenever the PT 365 classes would initiate, the separate document on the schemes would be provided with respect to all the ministries. So that can be referred before your prelims. Is that very clear? Anyhow, the schemes which are mentioned in economic survey, that becomes the criteria that which scheme should be prepared on priority. So if there are certain schemes which are mentioned in economic survey, automatically it becomes the priority. You should read those schemes without fail. Is that clear? So PM E-Vidya. So it was announced for school and higher education under what? Atmanirbhar Bharat program. So first, it was announced under Atmanirbhar Bharat program. Second, what is it all about? It's an initiative to unify all the efforts related to digital online education, basically to ensure equitable access to education. Is that clear? So one, it was announced for which set of education, it was announced under which program, what is the objective of PM E-Vidya, what components. So it has basically 4 components: one nation, one digital education infrastructure, that is nothing but Diksha. Even Vidyadan portal is also launched on Diksha. So Vidyadan, that is your contribution with respect to e-learning resources by different entities, चाहे educational bodies हो, private bodies हो, individual experts हो, you can contribute to the e-learning resource on the platform, and for this you have a separate portal, that is Vidyadan portal. Right? So one nation, one digital education infrastructure. That's the first component. Second component is one class, one TV channel through Swayam Prabha. So 12 channels are basically there to telecast high quality content. Then you have use of radio, community radio, podcast. So चाहे वो शिक्षा वाणी हो, ज्ञान वाणी हो, etc. Then with respect to differently abled children also, there is one DTH channel which is specifically for the hearing impaired students in sign language. Then with respect to the study material has also been developed in DAISY, that is digitally accessible information system, and in sign language. Both are available on the NIOS website and YouTube. So there are efforts made for differently abled children. There are efforts with respect to use of radio, community radio, with respect to the TV channels, with respect to the digital infrastructure, that is Diksha. Okay? So PM E-Vidya has 4 components. Then you have another aspect, another effort which has been made, another initiative, National Digital Education Architecture. Kya hai? So the blueprint of this digital infrastructure was launched in 2021. It is being set up with the mindset that digital first mindset. Is that clear? This will not only support the teaching, learning activities, but also planning, governance, administrative activities of the center, state and union territories. Is that clear? It will provide us diverse education ecosystem infrastructure which will be federated in nature, interoperable, so as to ensure the autonomy of the states and union territories. Is that very clear? ये सारी जो efforts हैं इनको डिटेल में नहीं पढ़ना होता है. You should only know what is it related to. So it has been set up within the context of digital first mindset, which is focusing on learning also, teaching also, planning, governance and administration. Is this very clear? Vidyanjali. So this Vidyanjali portal is basically being created, and what this portal will do, it will connect the community or the volunteers to interact directly with the school of their choices. So these communities or the volunteers can directly interact and connect with the schools of their choice so that they can share their knowledge, so that they can share their skills, and not only skills and knowledge but also contribute in terms of material, equipment or assets. So that is nothing but Vidyanjali portal. The intention is to connect the government and the government aided schools through community or volunteer management program. So these community and volunteers would directly be connecting to these schools of their choice, will share their knowledge, skills, and will also contribute in terms of assets, equipment, materials, etc. These are some of the initiatives which have been taken with respect to the education. Is that clear? ठीक है. Similarly, समग्र शिक्षा अभियान फ्लैगशिप स्कीम है, डिटेल में पढ़ना चाहिए, मतलब वन शुड स्टडी. तो आयुष्मान भारत हो गया, समग्र शिक्षा अभियान हो गया, नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी हो गई. दीज आर प्रोबेबल टॉपिक्स, वन शुड स्टडी. ठीक है. एनी हाउ, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एजुकेशन हैज लॉन्च समग्र शिक्षा अभियान. इट्स अ सेंट्रली स्पॉन्सर्ड स्कीम. It has subsumed existing 3 schemes, that is सर्व शिक्षा अभियान, राष्ट्रीय माध्यमिक शिक्षा अभियान and teacher education. Teacher training to be very precise. That has been subsumed under this one scheme, that is Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. It basically visualizes school as in continuum, continuum right from preschool to secondary. So it is trying, obviously ऐसा नहीं है क्योंकि RTE का ambit is very limited to primary and upper primary. So समग्र शिक्षा अभियान is trying to broaden the ambit from preschool to secondary. That is what is that it is not only focusing in implementation of RTE but also giving effect to the national education policy, because national education policy talks from preschool to secondary. It to also incorporate higher education. So what are the objectives? Quality education देना, learning outcomes को improve करना, social gender category gaps को bridge करना, vocational education देना, equity inclusion, implementation of RTE में स्टेट्स को सपोर्ट करना, टीचर ट्रेनिंग वगैरह इंश्योर करना, रीजनल बैलेंस इस्टेब्लिश करना, तो एजुकेशनल बैकवर्ड ब्लॉक्स पे और लेफ्ट विंग एक्सट्रीमिस्ट एरियाज पे, स्पेशल फोकस डिस्ट्रिक्ट पे, बॉर्डर एरियाज पे, एस्पिरेशनल डिस्ट्रिक्ट पे फोकस ज्यादा किया जाएगा, सो एज टू रिमूव द इम्बैलेंस विच इज एग्जिस्टिंग. ठीक है, इन जनरल ये आपके लिए है, ये क्योंकि कंटेंट में था तो मैंने मेंशन कर दिया, अदरवाइज इसको आप ओवरलुक कर सकते हो क्योंकि ये सारी बातें मैंने यहाँ पे आपको ऑलरेडी बता दी है. ठीक है. Then Nipun Bharath. See, Nipun Bharath is basically with respect to universalization of foundational literacy and numeracy, which was mentioned in your national education policy, that the target is to ensure universalization of foundational literacy and numeracy by 2026-27. Is that very clear? That is, every child achieves the desired competency in reading, writing and numeracy at the end of 3rd standard and not later by 5th standard. वैसे तो टारगेट है कि 3rd standard तक फाउंडेशनल लिटरेसी न्यूमरेसी अचीव हो जानी चाहिए by 2026-27. बाय चांस 3rd standard तक नहीं हो पाती है, डिजायर्ड कॉम्पिटेंसी अचीव नहीं हो पाती है विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू रीडिंग, राइटिंग, न्यूमरेसी, देन इन 4th and 5th standard इंडिविजुअल अटेंशन वुड बी प्रोवाइडेड in the form of teacher guidance and support. That is about Nipun. It is there in your content. अब दिक्कत ये है कि ये इंपॉर्टेंट है थोड़ा, तो जब आप इसको तैयारी करोगे सो यू विल बी डूइंग इन डिटेल. नाउ आई एम नॉट गेटिंग इनटू द डिटेलिंग ऑफ इट क्योंकि फिर तो हमारा कंटेंट नहीं खत्म होगा, बट आई हैव अरेंज द कंटेंट एट वन प्लेस. सो व्हेन यू आर स्टडिंग निपुण भारत, दिस इज विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू फाउंडेशनल लिटरेसी एंड न्यूमरेसी. व्हाट इज फाउंडेशनल लिटरेसी एंड न्यूमरेसी? How under Nipun Bharat this would be achieved? So whether it is with respect to encouraging the students, creating inclusive classroom and understanding the reasoning in the various domains, or high quality content provide karana, या capacity building of teachers करना, या फिर actively engage करना stakeholders को, या holistic assessment करना, या tracking करना learning outcomes को. So through these process the target is to ensure foundational literacy and numeracy. You should read this. This is for your reference which I am providing. Similarly, what is the focus of the mission? The focus of the mission is to ensure access and retainment of the children in the foundational years, capacity building of teachers, right? Qualitative resource material provide karana and tracking the progress of every child. This is the focus of Nipun Bharat. पता होना चाहिए. They have specifically identified, they have codified the learning outcomes. बाल वाटिका से लेकर grade 3 तक at every stage they have codified. How would you assess that whether the child has desired competency or not? तो ये आप अपने रेफरेंस के लिए रीड कर लेना, याद करने की जरूरत नहीं है. इतना स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछेंगे, बट हाँ ये डेफिनेटली पूछ सकते हैं कि देयर इज कोडिफिकेशन ऑफ लर्निंग आउटकम फ्रॉम बाल वाटिका टू grade 3. So there is a proper progress tracking mechanism. Is that very clear? Then different strategies have been outlined. Now this can also be important with respect to your writing, as in if the main specific question comes, and in general what needs to be done with respect to overall improvement in the school education. So contextualization of material, keeping in mind the linguistic social diversity, emphasis on child-centered pedagogy, emphasis on interactive classroom, a special package for foundational literacy and numeracy under Nishtha. Nishtha is basically to develop the potential of the teachers, ठीक है, so that they can contribute effectively to increase the learning outcome of the children. अब निष्ठा पे अलग से फिर कभी पढ़ेंगे, ठीक है. देन दीक्षा को कैसे यूज किया जा सकता है स्टूडेंट लर्निंग को, टीचर एक्सपीरियंस को, प्रोफेशनल डेवलपमेंट को इंश्योर करने में. सो एनीवे दिस पॉइंट्स कैन बी रिटन इन योर मेन स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चंस. तो अगर आपको वे फॉरवर्ड सजेस्ट करना हो तो तो आप इस तरह से वे फॉरवर्ड भी सजेस्ट कर सकते हो, बट दिस इज स्पेसिफिकली फॉर योर प्रीलिम्स. सो निपुण भारत becomes important for your prelims. Please do read Nipun Bharat from this PPT in detail. What is foundational literacy and numeracy? So it is the basis of future learning of the child. It is believed that if a child is not able to achieve foundational skills and with respect to comprehension, reading, writing, numeracy, so automatically in the later stages the child will be appearing unprepared to deal with the complexities of the education system. So what is foundational language and literacy and what is numeracy and mathematical skills? This is only for your understanding. Is that very clear? ठीक है. Then PM Poshan, that is being mentioned in your economic survey. So it's again this is important. Which of the following statement is true with respect to PM Poshan? It's a centrally sponsored scheme. It is launched for the period from 2021-22 to 25-26. It is a centrally sponsored scheme where the funding is being shared between center and state. However, with respect to the cost of food grains, transportation, management, monitoring, evaluation, the center is bearing the entire cost. This is a caveat with respect to your prelims. तो ध्यान रखना, centrally sponsored है, फंडिंग शेयर हो रही है 60:40 के रेशियो में. However, with respect to the cost of food grains, their procurement, transportation, monitoring, evaluation, management, the center is bearing the cost. However, cooking cost, payment to the cook, workers, that will be split in the ratio 60:40 with the states. The coverage is 12 crore children को benefit करेंगे. Midday meal under this has been extended to the children of Bal Vatika as well. अभी तक क्या था? Midday meal is for primary and upper primary, right? But now it has been extended to the children of preschool, that is Bal Vatika. Is that very clear? Is it clear? So it is in sync with the national education policy. Then to give effect to vocal for local as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat, the objectives of Atmanirbhar Bharat, PM Poshan will involve farmer producer organization and women self-help groups, and FPOs you have already studied in your previous economic survey session. So farmer producer organization ko aur women self-help group ko they will involve so as to give effect to vocal for local. Social audit would be made mandatory. Supplementary nutrition would be provided. That is the chief difference of PM Poshan from midday meal. Midday meal was focusing only on providing the meal, but this scheme is focusing also on the nutritional aspect of the food which was being provided. Then there are other aspects to it. For example, the idea of nutritional garden. For example, the idea of Tithi Bhojan. Tithi Bhojan is nothing but where the students from private school would be encouraged to share their meals with the children from marginalized section, and also community programs will be organized in which the children would be given special food on special occasions. So that is the concept of Tithi Bhojan. Okay. Remember, there was an essay, there is always a better practice to the best practice. So midday meal was a best practice at one point of time, right, to improve the nutrition, to improve the enrollment. However, this concept of Tithi Bhojan is even better. So it is that community participation, active community engagement is happening. So from here you can also pick up examples for your essay content. Did you get my point? Similarly, the idea of nutritional garden in school to provide additional micronutrients to the students. So PM Poshan is not only focusing on the meal but also the nutritional component. Is this very clear? Then with respect to higher education, economic survey has made reference in context of gross enrollment ratio to the All India Survey of Higher Education report. उन्होंने खुद mention किया है कि that the data has been sourced from All India Survey of Higher Education report. Again, the question, which of the following statement is true with respect to All India Survey for Higher Education report? First, who publishes? Ministry of Education. What are the key features about this survey? जैसे हमने असर का किया था ना, वैसे ही इसका. It's an annual web-based survey. 2010-11 से every year it is being conducted. It portrays the status of higher education in India. It is conducted under central sector scheme, that is Higher Education Statistics and Public Information System. It is based on voluntary uploading of the data by the institutions. You don't ask for the data, they voluntarily upload that. It covers institution under 3 categories: universities, colleges and standalone institution. Findings. Overall, the enrollment has increased. The maximum enrollment increase has been witnessed in context of UP, followed by Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra. If I talk about gross enrollment ratio, so in higher education, gross enrollment ratio is 27.1%. However, if you can see, the gross enrollment ratio among women, that is girl students, is higher than the boy students. So overall it is 27.1%, but the enrollment rate among girls is more than among the boys. Overall अगर मैं female enrollment की बात करूं, so there has been an increase of 18% in the female enrollment. That's a good thing. However, the enrollment of female is lowest in the institution of national importance. ये चैलेंज है कि एनरोलमेंट तो बढ़ा है फीमेल स्टूडेंट्स का, लेकिन जो इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ नेशनल इंपॉर्टेंस है, और ये इंस्टीट्यूट्स कौन से होते हैं जो नेशनल इंपॉर्टेंस, द वन विच हेल्प्स इन डेवलपिंग हाईली स्किल्ड पर्सोनल्स. तो जिस इंस्टीट्यूट में हाईली स्किल्ड पर्सोनल्स को डेवलप किया जाता है, वहां पे विमेन का पार्टिसिपेशन कम है. द एनरोलमेंट इज वेरी लेस. सो ओवरऑल द एनरोलमेंट हैज इंक्रीज्ड, बट विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ नेशनल इंपॉर्टेंस इट इज लेस. Gender parity, now it is favorable towards women. It is 1.01. Pupil teacher ratio is 26. There are 6 major disciplines in which majority of students are enrolled, 85% of them. Humanities, science, commerce, engineering, technology, medical science, IT and computer. With respect to foreign students also, maximum share is from the students of Nepal, followed by Afghanistan, Bangladesh, etc. This is with respect to soft power. You can add this dimension there. Now, with respect to the challenges in higher education, this is only for supporting your content I am providing. Nowhere this is there. लेकिन अगर higher education पे सवाल आता है, ठीक है, so the data is provided from All India Survey of Higher Education. Issues are these. For example, जल्दी से एक बार देख लेते हैं, hardly 2 minutes लगेंगे. Lack of accountability, transparency, professionalism, over centralization, bureaucratic structure. Higher education की प्रॉब्लम है. ग्रॉस एनरोलमेंट रेशियो जो है वो काफी कम है. हमारे यहाँ 27.1 है. वी वांट टू इमर्ज एज अ ग्लोबल पावर. यूएस में 88% है, चाइना में 54% है, ब्राजील में 51% है, इंडिया में क्या है 27.1%. सिमिलरली सोशल इनइक्विटी अभी भी एग्जिस्ट करती है. वैसे एनरोलमेंट रेशियो 27.1 है, लेकिन अगर शेड्यूल कास्ट में देखें और शेड्यूल ट्राइब्स में देखें, सो इट इज लोअर देन दी नेशनल एवरेज. इज दिस वेरी क्लियर? पुअर एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी है. रिपोर्ट कहती है अकॉर्डिंग टू इंडिया स्किल्स रिपोर्ट, एम्प्लॉयमेंट अक्रॉस द डिसिप्लिन इज 45%. मतलब 1/2 ऑफ योर ग्रेजुएट्स आर नॉट वर्थ एम्प्लॉयमेंट. Do you realize that unemployment is the biggest problem with respect to youth of your nation? If you do not resolve the problem of unemployment, it will result into radicalization. It will result into social chaos. It will result into drug abuse, deviant activities. Social fabric, the peaceful, harmonious fabric of your nation would be negatively impacted. Your dividend will turn into disaster. Is that clear? So the problem is poor employability of these people. Quality education एक तो नहीं देते हैं, दूसरी जो education दे भी रहे हैं, that is not relevant to the demand of the market. Then poor quality of the educational institution. Is that very clear? Only 14% of higher educational institution have the quality certification. तो वो जो असेसमेंट और एक्रेडिटेशन सर्टिफिकेशन है, ओनली 14% हैव द वैलिड एक्रेडिटेशन. सो द क्वालिटी इज मिसिंग. देन फैकल्टी ऑल्सो, चाहे क्वांटिटी हो फैकल्टीज की, चाहे क्वालिटी हो. अभी प्यूपल टीचर रेशियो 26 है, बट अकॉर्डिंग टू द स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन इट शुड बी 10. For every 10 students, there should be 1 teacher in higher education. So we are way behind the requisite aspect. So with respect to quantity as well as quality, there is lack of good faculties. And uska reason hai, we do not have any mechanism to ensure their accountability, to ensure their performance appraisal. Is that very clear? Then research ecosystem is very weak. Hardly 0.65% of your GDP is spent on research and development. If you look at the students who are enrolled in PhD program, is only 0.5% of the total number of students. So that ecosystem for research and development is also missing. Then there are shortage of funds. जो भी UGC budget sanction होता है, 65% is utilized by the central universities. So the amount for the rest of the state level universities and all, there is lack of or the shortage of funds. ये मैंने बस आपको 2 मिनट में बता दिया. This will always stay with you. try to collect the content at one place. I didn't want you to search here and there. That is why मैंने एक जगह कर दिया. थोड़ी सी speed fast इसलिए है आज, because we have to finish a good content, a good amount of content in a very limited time. Then in the backdrop of COVID, higher education पे there has been an impact. It has resulted into passive learning. There are प्रॉब्लम विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू अनप्रिपेयर्ड टीचर्स फॉर वर्चुअल क्लास, क्योंकि ये सब चीजें नहीं दे रखी हैं. तो पता तो होना चाहिए ना कि कोविड पैंडेमिक की वजह से हायर एजुकेशन में क्या दिक्कत आई. इंक्रीज्ड अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट बिकॉज ऑफ डिले इन एग्जाम्स एंड गेटिंग डिग्री सर्टिफिकेट्स. द प्रॉब्लम इज एब्सेंटिज्म, पुअर परफॉर्मेंस, लैक ऑफ इन्वॉल्वमेंट. ये प्रॉब्लम होता है ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन का. जो अटेंशन स्पैन होता है वो बहुत कम होता है. देन इकोनॉमिक शॉक्स, मोर्टालिटी, ऑल ऑफ दैट हैज ऑल्सो रिजल्टेड इनटू विड्रॉल or at least partial deferment in the higher education. There are a lot of families where the breadwinner or the main earning member has succumbed to the infection. There are a lot of people who have died. They have a lot of people who have contracted severe morbidities. So in that backdrop also, economic shocks and mortality, it has resulted into withdrawal of children from the higher education. ओवरऑल क्या करें? तो जो हमने चैलेंजेस हाईलाइट करे थे उसी का आप सोल्यूशन दे सकते हो. टीचिंग को ल्यूक्रेटिव करो, एक्रेडिटेशन कैपेसिटी को अपग्रेड करो, ब्लेंडेड लर्निंग, द राइट वर्ड वुड बी हाइब्रिड लर्निंग को प्रमोट करो. बोथ क्लासरूम एंड ऑनलाइन लर्निंग शुड गो हैंड इन हैंड. जैसे कॉन्सेप्ट आ रहा है फ्लिप्ड क्लासरूम. फ्लिप्ड क्लासरूम का मतलब होता है दैट द कंटेंट, ई कंटेंट वुड बी प्रोवाइडेड टू यू. सो वट एवर द मटीरियल, द वीडियो लेक्चर्स आर, you are already watching those video lectures and content at your home, and the classroom would be utilized for the discussion on that content. So that is a kind of a hybrid model which is being introduced. So one of the example of hybrid learning can be the model of flip classroom. Is that very clear? Otherwise overall blended learning जैसे अभी vision में चल रही है. So that is nothing but blended learning कि online offline both trend is being encouraged. Then education sector में investment करो, vocational courses वगैरह को encourage करो. Is this very clear? There is one concept, eligibility enrollment ratio rather than gross enrollment ratio. Now it was assumed, just now it was observed, assumed would be the wrong word, कि US में, China में, Brazil में enrollment ratio is so high as compared to India. India में सिर्फ 27.1% है. ऐसा क्यों? तो उसमें ये देखा गया कि जो एज ब्रैकेट है, एनरोलमेंट रेशियो आप कैसे कैलकुलेट करते हो, जो वो एलिजिबल एज ब्रैकेट है उसके कंपैरिजन में आप पॉपुलेशन का एवरेज निकालते हो, द वन विच इज एनरोल्ड, राइट. अब यहाँ पे जो एलिजिबल एज है दैट इज 18 to 23, राइट. बट इन दैट 18 to 23 का पॉपुलेशन, people are not eligible only for higher education because they have not passed only class 12th. तो ऑटोमेटिकली ग्रॉस एनरोलमेंट रेशियो कम हो जाता है इंडिया में. जब पहले ही ड्रॉप आउट हो गया, सेकेंडरी एजुकेशन पूरी ही नहीं करी, क्लास 12th पास ही नहीं करा, तो फिर इवन इफ यू बिलोंग टू दैट एज ब्रैकेट 18 to 23, यू आर नॉट एलिजिबल टू बी एनरोल्ड इन दी हायर एजुकेशन. और ये प्रॉब्लम आ रही है. इसीलिए उन्होंने कहा कि इन ऑर्डर टू इंप्रूव द एनरोलमेंट रेट रादर देन फोकसिंग ऑन ग्रॉस एनरोलमेंट रेट, you should focus on eligibility enrollment rate. How many of the children in this age bracket 18 to 23 are eligible for higher education, and what is the eligibility criteria? That you have at least passed class 12th. तो उसकी उन्होंने बात करी. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? Now the government has taken certain initiatives with respect to higher education. अब आपको एक complete picture दिख रही है. हायर एजुकेशन का स्टेटिस्टिक्स, हायर एजुकेशन के चैलेंजेस, हायर एजुकेशन का इंपैक्ट विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू कोविड, व्हाट शुड बी द वे फॉरवर्ड एंड व्हाट आर द एफर्ट्स ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट. So with respect to the government effort, multiple initiatives have been taken, whether it is vocationalization, whether it is multidisciplinarity, multiple entry exit point, globalization of education, or leveraging the potential of ICT. ये सब क्या है? These are the features of national education policy. If you've read your national education policy well, these are the features of national education policy under higher education. Is that very clear? Is that clear for everyone? Then with respect to integration of vocational education into higher education, the guidelines has been issued that higher educational institutions are going to offer the internship or apprenticeship embedded degree programs. What is National Apprenticeship Training Scheme, NATS? So it has been extended for next 5 years and the outlay of 3,000 crore rupees has been provided. it will ensure the training of 9 lakh students and they would be made employable. Yahi challenge tha, that the students are not employable. So in order to ensure the employability, this apprenticeship training program has been launched and it has been further extended with increased outlay. Yahan pe the students will be provided apprenticeship with respect to those technologies which are emerging, like artificial intelligence, drone technology, etc. Abhi tak this program was offered, the scheme was offered to the engineering students. Now the ambit has been broadened and the apprenticeship will be provided to the students from humanities, commerce, science, besides the engineering stream. Is that very clear? So this is with respect to make your students employable. जो कि अभी हमने देखा only 45% of your graduates are employable. So to improve the employability, so national education policy is an effort with respect to higher education. With respect to the employability of the graduates, National Apprenticeship Training Program is the effort, NATS. Okay. Then academic bank of credit, this is also mentioned in your higher education, national education policy with respect to higher education, that a digital storage would be ensured with respect to the academic credits that you have acquired from various higher educational institution, and at the time of delivering you the degree, all these credits would be calculated at the time of awarding the degree. So there would be an academic bank of credit. Is that very clear? Then appropriate amendments have been made so as to facilitate multiple entry and exit points in the higher educational institution, to make the education relevant, to improve the interest of the students in learning, right? To make it more flexible, to make it more relevant to the market demand. Then the concept of e-PG Pathshala. This is with respect to the postgraduate courses. So 154 universities have accepted the credit transfer for the courses which are offered by the Swayam platform. e-PG Pathshala has been offered as an online gateway of postgraduate courses. Is that very clear? This website has been used widely in the backdrop of COVID-19 by all the universities, and they have used e-PG Pathshala content as a flip classroom. Now you understand what is flipped classroom? Okay? Postgraduate content has been provided. So what is this e-PG Pathshala? So this is the portal under which high quality interactive content in different subjects across all disciplines are provided at a postgraduate level. Is that very clear? Here the students, teachers can use this e-content as a resource material in a flipped classroom model. What is this flipped classroom model? This is a model which exists in contrast to the conventional classroom teaching, where the students will already watch the video lecture and study material at home, and in classroom it would be used for critical thinking, discussions, problem solving, assignments, etc. Is this very clear? This is what I was talking about, flipped classroom model. So e-PG Pathshala is a portal which is providing you curriculum based, interactive, high quality content with respect to postgraduate courses across the discipline, across different subjects. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? 68 subjects to be precise at postgraduate level. Another scheme is Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. It is basically to cater the rural local needs by improving or using higher education. It's a flagship program of Ministry of Education. The target is to link higher educational institutions with that of the villages. And what will happen after you will link them? They will contribute to the economic and social development of these village communities by using their knowledge. Here two aspects would be focused upon: the human development and the economic development, and IIT Delhi would be the national coordinating institute under Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. Is that clear? So what is Unnat Bharat Abhiyan? It's a flagship scheme under Ministry of Education. The purpose is to ensure economic and social development of the villages by linking it with higher educational institution. IIT Delhi would be the coordinating institute. Here two aspects would be focused upon: the economic development and the human development. Then scholarship for the weaker section. Then skill development. Now, We have talked about education. The another component of demographic dividend या quality of workforce is the skill development. So to unlock the demographic dividend, various steps have been taken to improve the skills of the population. So whether it is vocational training or it is overall skill development, the efforts have been made. Your periodic labor force survey says that formal vocational technical training among youth and working age population have increased. However, again, we have the data over pre-pandemic state. Is that very clear? Overall, there has been improvement in the skills, both male, female, rural and urban areas. Is that very clear? However, the development or ensuring of training is less in rural areas as compared to urban areas. यहाँ मैंने data इसलिए नहीं दिया क्योंकि वैसे भी याद तो रहना नहीं है. What is the point of remembering these datas? Is this very clear? In general, you can see the distribution of the persons who have received the formal, vocational and technical training. Is this clear? So if you can see 2019-20, overall there has been an improvement, whether it is with respect to youth, that is 15 to 29, or it is with respect to the working age group, there has been an increase. Is that clear? However, the increase in urban area is more as compared to increase in the rural area. However, overall there has been an increase as compared to the previous year. कोई डेटा याद करने की जरूरत नहीं है. फिर आता है एक आइडिया होना चाहिए कि वोकेशनल एजुकेशन और स्किल डेवलपमेंट है क्या. सो वोकेशनल एजुकेशन बेसिकली आपको है कि टू प्रोवाइड यू प्रैक्टिकल कोर्सेज सो एज टू इंप्रूव योर एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी इन द लेबर मार्केट. दैट इज व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय वोकेशनल एजुकेशन. So practical courses are being offered so that you gain skills and experience so as to improve your employability in the labor market. Now, this concept of vocational education and skill development has very bright prospects for the individual as well as the nation. Obviously, demographic dividend, human capital formation, employment opportunity, economic growth, domestic demand, consumption, हम बात कर चुके हैं. But despite that, with respect to vocational education and skill development, there are certain drawbacks. This is again, I'm giving you the premise before arriving out at the efforts which have been made by the government. Practical training नहीं है, रिफ्रेशर कोर्सेज नहीं है, नैरो करिकुलम है, स्पेसिफिक इंडस्ट्री ओरिएंटेड करिकुलम नहीं है, इंस्टीट्यूशंस नहीं है टू इम्पार्ट वोकेशनल एजुकेशन. सो विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू वोकेशनल एजुकेशन एंड स्किल ट्रेनिंग, डिस्पाइट हैविंग साउंड प्रोस्पेक्ट्स, इट हैज सर्टेन चैलेंजेस. The status is not good with respect to vocational education. Nobody wants to access vocational education. There are certain stereotypes which are existing. Practical training नहीं है, narrow curriculum है, specific industry oriented curriculum नहीं है, institutions नहीं है. So national education policy has clearly focused on vocational education and it has specified what needs to be done. So with respect to vocational education, there has been effort made by National Education Policy. They have clearly identified what needs to be done so as to further vocational education in context of India. So again, in this pretext, ये आपके economic survey में है. So at least you should know what constitutes vocational education. So this is the practical course through which you are gaining skill and experience so as to improve your एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी इन द लेबर मार्केट. उसके अपने प्रोस्पेक्ट्स हैं, डिस्पाइट दैट वो अच्छा नहीं कर पा रहा है क्योंकि कुछ चैलेंजेस हैं. तो उन चीज़ों को ओवरकम करने के लिए नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी हैज पुट फॉरवर्ड दीज टारगेट्स. It says at least 50% of the school, and please prepare this, this can be important, at least 50% of the school learners to get exposure to vocational education by 2025. Considering students in vocational education while arriving at the gross enrollment targets, secondary schools to collaborate with polytechnics, local industry, skill labs, hub and spoke models should be set up so as to ensure that other schools can use this फैसिलिटी. मतलब हब एंड स्पोक, मतलब एक हब क्रिएट कर दिया और उसके स्पोक्स निकाल दिए. सो हब एंड स्पोक मॉडल कैन बी क्रिएटेड सो दैट इफ द फैसिलिटी इज अवेलेबल एट वन स्कूल, इट कैन बी यूज्ड बाय अदर स्कूल्स. इज दैट क्लियर? वोकेशनल एजुकेशन शुड बी ऑफर्ड बाय हायर एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस. ये अभी हमने बात करी ना, अप्रेंटिसशिप और इंटर्नशिप बेस्ड डिग्री कोर्सेज वुड बी ऑफर्ड. ठीक है. Higher educational institutions should conduct short-term certificate courses. Lok Vidya should be ensured to the students. Then vocational courses should be provided through open distance learning mode. Integrate करो vocational education को school and higher level पर. Ministry of Education will constitute a national committee for the integration of vocational education. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? बट एक एक लाइन में पता होना चाहिए हायर एजुकेशन पे क्या कह रहा है, सेकेंडरी एजुकेशन पे क्या कह रहा है, एक कमिटी को कॉन्स्टिट्यूट करने की बात चल रही है, ओपन डिस्टेंस लर्निंग प्रोवाइड करने की बात चल रही है. ठीक है. Setting up of incubation centers in higher education institutions in partnership with the industries. Is that very clear? Then national skill qualification framework for each discipline or vocation and profession. Then aligning Indian standards to the international standard classification of the occupation which is maintained by ILO, that is International Labour Organization. Is this very clear? So you don't have to learn everything, but yes, few of the points can be referred that these are the initiatives or the targets which have been set up under national education policy with respect to vocational training. You can get a question in your mains examination. What do you mean by vocational education? With respect to the challenges faced by vocational education, what are the steps taken? So steps will be the targets which are set up under national education policy. Is this clear? Then with respect to Skill India mission, पुराना mission है तो Skill India was launched in 2015. It focuses on reskilling, upskilling. Under this mission, these are the programs which are implemented: Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas, Jan Shikshan Sansthan, then Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme and Craftsman Training Scheme. Now, with respect to Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, you can refer. This is only for your reference. ठीक है? This is an important scheme. Objectives पता होने चाहिए, salient features पता होने चाहिए. इसके key components क्या हैं? Short term training है, recognition of priority learning है, special projects हैं. Then 2 components हैं इसके. Then what is Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana 3.0 talking about, which was launched in 2021. And finally, this is what is written in your इकोनॉमिक सर्वे. तो इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में यह बताया गया कि कितने परसेंटेज लोगों को ट्रेनिंग दी गई. ठीक है, कितनों को जॉब इशू हुआ, ठीक है, प्लेस्ड हो गए, कितनों को सर्टिफिकेशन दिया गया. सो दिस इज व्हाट इज रिटन इन योर इकोनॉमिक सर्वे. बट डू यू रियलाइज दैट आपको ये सारे डेटाज नहीं याद करने, बिकॉज दिस इज नॉट पॉसिबल फॉर यू. व्हाट कैन बी आस्क्ड इज which of the following statement is true with respect to Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. It is a component under Skill India mission. Objective is to mobilize large number of youth to take up industry design quality skill training, to increase the productivity of the workforce, to encourage the standardization of the certification process. The pilot phase was launched in 2015 and Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana 3.0 has been launched in 2021. The target is to ensure skill development by providing short duration skill training and by providing incentives via means of monetary rewards to the youth in exchange of skill certification. There are different components. एक short term training है जहाँ पे स्कूल, कॉलेज, ड्रॉप आउट या अनएम्प्लॉयड को ट्रेनिंग दी जाती है 2 to 6 months की, और जब वो कंप्लीशन हो जाता है तो सर्टिफिकेशन हैज बीन इशूड. Then you have recognition of prior learning. There are certain individuals who already have the prior learning experience. So that skill and the experience is assessed and the certification is provided. Here the duration of the training is hardly 12 to 80 hours as against that short term training. Okay? So in short term it is 2 to 6 months. Here already the prior experience and skill is there. You just have to assess, certify it under the component, and that maximum would take 12 to 80 hours. There are 2 components. One component is centrally sponsored, centrally managed. Other is centrally sponsored but state managed. Is that very clear? Then obviously the target is to create skill development. The target is to provide short-term training course. The target is to improve or to provide them incentive in the form of monetary rewards. Is that very clear? Here the focus of 3.0 is basically bridging the gap in promoting skill development in those areas which are part of फोर्थ इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन. सो न्यू एज जॉब रोल्स के लिए लोगों को प्रिपेयर करना बाय प्रोवाइडिंग देम द स्किल्स so as to bridge the demand supply gap. The target is to train 8 lakh candidates under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana 3.0. However, this is so far been done. For example, 3.0 में 8 lakh candidates को skill करना target था, 3.48 lakh persons have been trained. But अब ये थोड़ी ना याद करने बैठोगे, but this is what is being provided under economic survey. Is that very clear? What you can see is that Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana is also providing training to the migrant laborers, specifically in context of COVID-19, in context of 6 specific states. ये 6 states में ज़्यादा ध्यान दिया गया है. You have Bihar, MP, Odisha, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and Assam. Is this very clear? Then also the micro program under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana has been focusing on targeting the artisan, or so as to provide the employment to all the artisan community. So not only they are focusing with respect to those who already possess the skills, or they are not focusing only on the migrant labor, they are also focusing on the artisan community. Is that very clear? So they are also focusing on reviving the traditional crafts of different areas. Is that very clear? Then you have another scheme, that is Jan Shikshan Sansthan. So the objective of this scheme is to uplift the rural population economically. And how would you uplift? By imparting them the essential skill training. See, these are the things which you have to learn. I can provide you at one place, but you have to learn this. So to uplift the rural population economically by imparting essential skill training. The salient feature is it will provide vocational training to non-literates, neo-literates as well as school dropouts in the rural areas by identifying those skills which are relevant to the market of that area. Is that very clear? तो यहाँ पे आपको uplift करना है economic status of rural population by providing them the skills, and the skills would be provided to non-literate, neo-literate and school dropouts. The mandate is that the skills have to be provided in non-formal mode. Is that very clear? ठीक है. So it would be provided to non-literate, neo-literate and person with rudimentary level of education up to 8th and school dropouts up to 12th standard. Age bracket will be 15 to 45 years. It will be implemented through NGO. 100% grant would be provided by the center. Which is the priority group? Women, SC, ST, minority, other backward section. And for this Jan Shikshan Sansthans जो हैं, they are registered under Society Registration Act. Is that very clear? So which of the following statement is true with respect to Jan Shikshan Sansthan? The objective, how it will be implemented, how it will be funded, which is the priority group, it is registered under which section? So it is registered under Society Registration Act. Again, it can be a question for your prelims. Is that clear? Just for your information, who are neo-literate? They are basically those adult or an adolescent who due to some factor were not able to complete their education or were able to use the educational opportunities which were offered at a particular time. However, at the later stage, they have acquired the skills either through formal or non-formal approaches. Is that very clear? So neo-literate are those who at a given point of time could not benefit from the opportunities of education. However, in the later stages, through formal, non-formal setup, they have tried to acquire the skills. Then, National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme. So, this scheme, you can just have a look at it, that itne engage हुए हैं. It promotes apprenticeship training and engagement by providing financial support to the industrial establishment. बस. क्राफ्ट्समैन ट्रेनिंग स्कीम, इट इज फॉर लॉन्ग टर्म ट्रेनिंग. अभी तक जो हम बात कर रहे थे दैट वाज शॉर्ट टर्म ट्रेनिंग, दिस इज फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ लॉन्ग टर्म ट्रेनिंग. अगेन डेटा की जरूरत नहीं है और ये इतना कोई इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, बस इतना पता हो तो भी काफी है. Then ASEEM portal. So it is a digital platform. It is there to match the skilled workforce with the market demand. So it is acting as a directory for the skilled workforce. So which of the following statement is true with respect to ASEEM portal? So it is like a directory of the skilled workforce. Is that very clear? ठीक है? Is it making sense? The portal consists of 3 IT-based AIs, that is artificial intelligence-driven interface. One is the job application for the individual. Second is a demand and campaign management system. Basically, the employers will forecast what is the current demand and what can be the demand in the future. And third is a dashboard for analysis and insight, which can be used for future decision making. So this ASEEM portal is basically like a directory which is going to match the skilled workforce from the demand in the labor market. यहाँ पे 3 AI इंटरफेस हैं, एक जॉब एप्लीकेशन के लिए है, दूसरा वहां पे जहां फोरकास्ट किया जाएगा कि करंट और फ्यूचर डिमांड्स क्या है, एंड तीसरा इंटरफेस है फॉर एनालिसिस एंड इनसाइट्स. देन यू हैव इंडिया इंटरनेशनल स्किल सेंटर. बस इसमें एक चीज याद रख लेना, दिस इंडिया इंटरनेशनल स्किल सेंटर इज जो नेटवर्क है, इट इज बेसिकली यू आर केटरिंग टू द नीड्स ऑफ द फॉरेन कंट्रीज वेयर इंडियन मैन पावर इज इन डिमांड. इट्स अ फी बेस्ड मार्केट ड्रिवन मॉडल. दैट्स इट, दैट्स ऑल व्हाट इज रिक्वायर्ड. इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? ठीक है, आप एक लाइन और कर सकते हो कि इंक्रीमेंटल स्किल ट्रेनिंग प्रोवाइड की जाती है इंटरनेशनल स्टैंडर्ड्स पे. इंडिया हैज अग्रीमेंट विद सर्टेन कंट्रीज. Is that very clear? So this India International Skill Center network जो है, it is catering to the needs of those foreign countries जहाँ पे Indian manpower is in demand. It's a fee-based market-driven model. यहाँ पे incremental skill training international standards पे provide की जाती है, and the assessment of the skill is being done with respect to the employment overseas. Is this clear? Then Pradhan Mantri, basically PM Daksh. So it's a national action plan for skilling of the marginalized person. So the eligible target group will be provided skill development जहाँ पे upskilling होगी, short term training होगी, long term training होगी, entrepreneurship development होगा. Is this clear? So PM Daksh is a national action plan for skilling of the marginalized person, and those marginalized person, the eligible target group, will be provided skill development with respect to these things. Upskilling, reskilling, short term, long term, entrepreneurship development. Is this very clear? So with this, the skill development aspect also comes to an end. The next thing that we have to talk about is the health aspect. Okay. So the third component of this, we have 4 components. One was education, which we have done. Second was skill, which we have done. Third is health, and fourth is trends in employment. So if you look at the health, it says of all the forms of inequality, injustice in the healthcare is the most shocking and most inhuman. That is what Martin Luther King Jr. says. Is this very clear? So of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is most shocking and most inhuman. Now, whatever we are going to discuss so far, if you have seen those health components in your economic survey, Pradhan Mantri, basically Ayushman Bharath Health and Wellness Center, Ayushman Bharath Jan Arogya Yojana, ठीक है. So all of that which is being mentioned, it is with respect to intention of achieving universal health coverage. So you should have an idea what constitutes universal health coverage. Is that very clear? Again, this is for your reference, but again, this is how we prepare. So what do you mean by universal health coverage? So what is universal health coverage? It talks about equity, it talks about quality, it talks about that your financial capacity would not be crippled. That is, you will be protected against the financial risk. So universal health coverage means 4AQ. Availability, accessibility, affordability, awareness, quality healthcare would be ensured. What is the prospect of universal health coverage? Obviously, it will enable us to achieve various sustainable development goals. It will enable us to reap the benefits of demographic dividend. It will ensure socio-economic development potential. It will act as a catalyst, right? It will ensure equity, justice, inclusive growth. It will help us to alleviate poverty. So overall, these are the broad prospects of universal health coverage. However, to achieve the goal of universal health coverage, there are certain barriers. Barriers मतलब government expenditure नहीं है, privatization of healthcare है, ठीक है. So if I talk about the barriers, so government expenditure is less, there is privatization of healthcare. It says that 70% of the outpatient care and 60% of the inpatient care is provided by the private sector. So that is another challenge which is there. Not only that, the problem lies with the out-of-pocket expenditure because regulation of private sector is not there. So because of which compromised medical ethics कह लो, regulation का absence कह लो, out-of-pocket expenditure is very high, which has further aggravated the incidences of poverty because of high out-of-pocket expenditure. Not only that, there is lack of qualitative workforce. So not only qualitative but quantity also. For example, WHO says for every 1,000 patient you should have one doctor. But in our country we have one doctor for every 1,456 population. Is that very clear? So the problem lies with the quantity of the workforce. Again, WHO says that out of all the doctors, the medical professionals that you have, only 53% of them have the requisite medical qualification. That means the problem is not only with respect to the quantity but also with respect to the quality. Then challenge lies with respect to out-of-pocket expenditure, which further gets aggravated in the absence of insurance coverage. So Insurance Regulatory Development Authority, that is IRDA, talks about that how there exists very minimum insurance coverage. I think it is 19% in urban areas and some 14% in rural areas. So overall the average is very less. Then there exists rural-urban divide with respect to infrastructure. There exists regional divide with respect to infrastructure. The problem is that we have not been able to deal with the menace of non-communicable diseases. There are new emerging issues like mental health. There are emerging issues like indoor pollution, non-communicable diseases. So that has also become the challenge. The problem lies with research and development. Okay? So because of which the cost of medication is very high because we have to depend upon other countries. So there are certain barriers. For example, then the approach towards health is also very narrow. Our approach is only in context of curative care, whereas if you talk about health, it is a broad understanding. Promotive care, preventive care, curative care, rehabilitative care. Our focus is only on curative care. It is only 7% of the health budget which is spent on the preventive care. तो हम प्रोमोटिव, प्रिवेंटिव, रिहैबिलिटेटिव केयर पे फोकस ही नहीं करते हैं. तो अगर 100 रुपए आप हेल्थ पे स्पेंड कर रहे हो तो उसमें से सिर्फ 7 रुपए आप प्रिवेंटिव केयर पे फोकस करते हो. सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट, हमारा प्राइमरी हेल्थ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर वीक है, इसीलिए आयुष्मान भारत हेल्थ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर मिशन लॉन्च किया है. इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? देख लो. गवर्नमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर, नैरो इंटरप्रिटेशन ऑफ कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ गुड हेल्थ, एडिक्वेट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर नहीं है, हेल्थ वर्कफोर्स की कमी है क्वालिटी क्वांटिटी में, इंटीग्रेटेड प्लेटफॉर्म नहीं है डेटा का, प्राइवेटाइजेशन ऑफ हेल्थ केयर है, आउट ऑफ पॉकेट एक्सपेंडिचर है, जेनेरिक मेडिसिन नहीं है, हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस नहीं है, रीजनल वेरिएशंस एग्जिस्ट करते हैं. तो क्या करें? कम्युनिटी पार्टिसिपेशन करो, ट्रेनिंग करो, स्किलिंग करो, हेल्थ प्रमोट करो, डिजीज प्रिवेंट करो, लेजिस्लेटिव रेगुलेटरी फ्रेमवर्क को स्ट्रेंथन करो, हेल्थ इंफॉर्मेशन सिस्टम, नेशनल डिजिटल हेल्थ मिशन, मोर बजटरी एलोकेशन, हो गया ना 2.1%, मल्टी सेक्टोरल अप्रोच लेकर आओ, जल जीवन मिशन, स्वच्छ भारत मिशन, प्रधान मंत्री उज्ज्वला योजना. डिड यू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इट मीन्स व्हेन वी से मल्टी सेक्टोरल अप्रोच विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू हेल्थ? ठीक है. So you have Ayushman Bharat Health and Wellness Centers. So vision of Ayushman Bharat is to achieve universal health coverage. What is universal health coverage? We have just now discussed. What are the prospects? What are the challenges? What more needs to be done? Is that very clear? So with respect to that, what government efforts have been made? Ayushman Bharat. There are two components of Ayushman Bharat, Health and Wellness Center, and the other component is Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. Is that clear? So if I talk about health and wellness centers, they have to establish 1,50,000 health and wellness center where comprehensive primary health care would be provided, whether it is reproductive child health, whether it is non-communicable disease services, communicable disease services, all of that would be provided. In fact, through the platform of e-Sanjeevani, the teleconsultation would also be ensured. Is that clear? So as to widen the ambit of accessibility with respect to primary health care. Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, that's the second component. So the scheme is fully funded by central government. Cost of implementation would be shared between central and the state government. It's a centrally sponsored scheme. The objective is to provide health insurance cover up to 5 lakh per family per year for secondary and tertiary hospitalization. To 10 crore poor and vulnerable families. It was launched in 2018. It was recommended as a part of national health policy. The objective was to achieve universal health coverage, to provide preventive, promotive, ambulatory care at primary, secondary, tertiary level. It has already subsumed Rashtriya Swasth Bima Yojana and Senior Citizen Health Insurance Scheme. National Health Authority is the implementation agency. There is no cap on the family size. Beneficiaries would be identified through socio-economic caste census. It is cashless, paperless access to the services. Both these services can be availed at public and private impaneled hospitals. So here pre-post hospitalization expenses both would be covered. Again, Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharath Jan Arogya Yojana, to be very precise, Ayushman Bharath Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, you might get a question in detail. They might ask you the prospects, they might ask you the challenges. So this is just for your understanding. Prospect क्या है? Universal health coverage, sustainable development goal, public health care का strengthen होना, new health infrastructure remote areas में develop होना, out of pocket expenditure reduce होना, quality of life improve होना, human capital develop होना, economic growth contribute होना. I have already inboxed it. Just glance through these inboxed points. Is this very clear? Status क्या है? अभी तक 17.5 crore Ayushman cards have been issued. Is this very clear? Out of total 2.7 crore authorized hospital admissions which has happened. So it has been provided through a network of 25,000 hospitals. Again, these are the datas which have been provided, but this is not supposed to be remembered at all. बस इतना है कि आयुष्मान कार्ड्स इशू हो गए टू अ कंसिडरेबल पॉपुलेशन, ठीक है, एंड 25,000 हॉस्पिटल के नेटवर्क के थ्रू बोथ पब्लिक एंड प्राइवेट हॉस्पिटल्स द ऑथोराइज्ड एडमिशंस हैव टेकन प्लेस. देन टू इंश्योर, वो कहते नहीं है कि आपके IEC कैंपेन, इंफॉर्मेशन एजुकेशन एंड कम्युनिकेशन, सो फॉर इंफॉर्मेशन एजुकेशन कम्युनिकेशन ड्राइव आपके द्वार आयुष्मान वॉज कैरीड आउट इन 2021 विद द सपोर्ट ऑफ ग्रास रूट लेवल वर्कर्स. हम कहते हैं ना कि किसी भी पॉलिसी के बारे में अवेयरनेस जनरेशन के लिए यू कैन रिजॉर्ट टू IEC कैंपेन, इंफॉर्मेशन एजुकेशन कम्युनिकेशन. दैट इज वॉट इट इज टॉकिंग अबाउट. इज दिस वेरी क्लियर? Then what are the concerns with respect to Ayushman Bharat? Widening inequities. The top performing states जो हैं with respect to Ayushman Bharat are basically the rich states. There is lack of control over the private sector क्योंकि कोई उनका regulation नहीं है. There is only one act which is meant for the regulation of private sector, that is Clinical Establishment Act. पर क्योंकि health is a state subject, not all states have implemented Clinical Establishment Act. That is a challenge. एडिक्वेट बजटरी एलोकेशन नहीं है, प्राइवेट हेल्थ केयर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर नहीं है, क्वालिटी एक्रीडेशन नहीं है, क्रेडिबल डेटा नहीं है. प्रॉब्लम इज घोस्ट बेनिफिशियरीज, कन्वर्जन ऑफ OPD पेशेंट्स इनटू IPD पेशेंट्स डेलिबरेटली सो एज टू इंड्यूस और फैसिलिटेट दिस इंश्योरेंस कवरेज. इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? पोस्ट discharge जो support system है, it is provided only up to 15 days. That again becomes a challenge. Here one of the major challenges, provider induced demand. Doctor creates the demand for you to access the services irrespective whether you need the services or not. This is not a generalized thing, but this is one of the observation. क्या करें? पहली बात तो हेल्थ को कॉन्करेंट लिस्ट में शिफ्ट करो, रीजनल वेरिएशंस को एड्रेस करो, हॉस्पिटल्स को एक्रेडिट करो, strict action law against those hospitals which are involved in unethical practices, real time data collection करो और जो भी gaps हो उनको plug in करो. National Digital Health Mission, this you will refer, I'm just telling you overall, again this becomes very important. वो हम बोल रहे थे ना कि एक centralized health information system होना चाहिए, right? And Digital Health Mission is a very progressive concept, however it needs to be implemented properly. So what is National Digital Health Mission? It's a voluntary healthcare program which aims to reduce the gap among the stakeholders. Is that clear? जैसे डॉक्टर्स हो गए, हॉस्पिटल्स हो गए, सिटीजन्स हो गए. So to reduce the gap among the stakeholders, this is a voluntary healthcare program. It will enable to connect these stakeholders with an integrated digital health infrastructure. क्योंकि इसका भी ऑब्जेक्टिव है यूनिवर्सल हेल्थ कवरेज. Is that clear? तो इसके ये एलिमेंट्स हैं, चाहे वो हेल्थ ID हो, हेल्थ फैसिलिटी रजिस्टर हो, पर्सनल हेल्थ रिकॉर्ड हो, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मेडिकल रिकॉर्ड हो, डिजी डॉक्टर हो, तो अगर आप इसको डिटेल में पढ़ोगे यू विल गेट द आंसर. दीज आर द बिल्डिंग ब्लॉक्स. बेसिकली इट्स अ वॉलंटरी हेल्थ केयर प्रोग्राम वेयर द ऑब्जेक्टिव इज टू कनेक्ट द पीपल, द स्टेक होल्डर्स विद द इंटीग्रेटेड हेल्थ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर सो एज टू अचीव द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ यूनिवर्सल हेल्थ कवरेज. यहां पे जैसे डिजी डॉक्टर है, ये एक रिपोजिटरी है ऑफ ऑल द डॉक्टर्स हु आर एनरोल्ड इन द country with all their specific details. Similarly, health facility register, it is the repository of all the health facilities in the country, whether public or private. Similarly, health ID, it is the repository of all health related information of the person. Similarly, electronic medical record, जो patients के charts नहीं बनते हैं, ये उसी का digital version है. Similarly, personal health record, e-record of health information about the individual which is obtained from multiple resources, but here the controlling power is with the individual. Is that clear? Then there is one consent manager and gateway which says that it is a platform कि कोई भी information जो exchange होगी, this will only be after the consent of the patient. So data privacy को ensure करने के लिए. Is this clear? Now benefits, challenges and way forward, ये आपके reference के लिए है, ये आप पढ़ लेना, नहीं तो आज क्लास खत्म नहीं होगी. Is this very clear? Similarly, another aspect which is mentioned in your content is Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharath Health Infrastructure Mission. It's the largest pan-India scheme which is there for improvement of the public healthcare infrastructure. It will be implemented in every district. It is in addition to the National Health Mission. The objective is to strengthen the public health infrastructure at the grassroots level. And how would it be done? It will strengthen the public health infrastructure and public health governance capacity to meet the challenges of current and future pandemic. It will ensure comprehensive primary health care. It is there to expand and build IT-enabled disease surveillance system which would be existing at national level, regional level, district level and block level. Then not only that, it will ensure one health approach. You will prevent, you will detect and you will respond. So in case of any infectious disease outbreak, first you will try to prevent, you will detect and you will respond. You will support research on COVID-19 and other infectious diseases. So this is with respect to Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharath Health Infrastructure Mission, which is to strengthen the public health infrastructure at the grassroots level so as to meet the challenges which is posed by the current as well as the future challenges. And how it would be done? By expanding and building IT-enabled disease resilience to support research and also to deliver one health approach. ये सारे points आप in general भी use कर सकते हो कि what should be done. तो एक one health approach use करनी चाहिए, prevent, detect, respond, या फिर IT enabled disease surveillance mechanism ensure करना चाहिए at all levels, या फिर research को encourage करना चाहिए. So this can be used in general also if the question is directly not asked on this mission. Then Pradhan Mantri Swasth Suraksha Yojana direct है to correct the regional imbalances which is existing with respect to the availability and affordability of the reliable tertiary healthcare services. So to augment the facility for medical education also, इसमें क्या है वो All India Institute for Medical Sciences, medical colleges, they are set up and upgraded so as to correct the regional imbalance to ensure availability, affordability and also to facilitate quality medical education. That is what Pradhan Mantri Swasth Suraksha Yojana is all about. यहाँ पे National Digital Health Mission important है, आयुष्मान भारत important है, Health Infrastructure Mission important है, वो नया है. You might get a question. ठीक है. देन ई संजीवनी, इनिशियली ये जो ई संजीवनी प्लेटफॉर्म था दैट वाज फॉर डॉक्टर टू डॉक्टर टेलीमेडिसिन सिस्टम विच वाज बीइंग डेवलप्ड अंडर दिस हेल्थ एंड वेलनेस सेंटर प्रोग्राम. बेसिकली यहाँ पे हब एंड स्पोक मॉडल यूज करके आप कनेक्ट करते थे सारे हेल्थ एंड वेलनेस सेंटर को. यहाँ पे जो हब होता था वो सारी सर्विसेज ऑफर करता था और जो स्पोक्स होते थे वो लिमिटेड सर्विस ऑफर करते थे. तो जो स्पोक्स होते थे अगर वहां पे कोई एग्रीवेटेड सिचुएशन है, इंटेंस सिचुएशन है, सो देन दे यूज टू रेफर द patient to the hub areas. So hub where full array of services are offered. Spokes are those areas where limited services are offered. So eSanjeevani platform was basically used for doctor to doctor telemedicine system. However, in the wake of COVID-19, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare ने इसके ambit को widen कर दिया है and patient to doctor teleconsultation has also been included under eSanjeevani. Basically to ensure to universalize the accessibility and availability of the health services at an affordable and in this case at free of cost. Is this very clear? Then health outcome indicators की बात करें तो National Family Health Survey report number 5, it has provided us the indicator with respect to these aspects. ये data important है. If I'm saying this data is important, that means you have to learn this data, and in what capacity? This last one has to be learned, not the remaining. This last column has to be learned. Total fertility rate has reduced below the replacement level. Sex ratio at birth has increased from 919 to 929. Infant mortality has reduced to 35.2. The target is to reduce it to single digit by 2030 as a part of sustainable development goal. Under 5 mortality has reduced to 41.9. Institutional birth, the target was universalization. Still, it has been increased to 88.6, which is a considerable achievement. Pregnant women, those who are anemic, more than 50%. This again remains a challenge. इसमें हमने प्रधान मंत्री सुरक्षित मातृत्व अभियान, iron folic, all those supplements were being provided. Despite that, the problem of anemia is major among the women. Then population who are living with improved sanitation has increased to 70% from 48.5%. It is a considerable improvement. Similarly, with respect to clean fuel for cooking also, it is more than 50%. Again, it is a considerable improvement. This data has to be remembered. Please write it down somewhere. With respect to child health indicators, again this becomes important. So with respect to stunting, wasting, underweight, these are the data which needs to be remembered. Stunting 36%, still globally it is the highest. Wasting 19%, underweight is 32. Stunting means height with respect to age. Underweight matlab weight with respect to age. But wasting means weight with respect to height. लिख लो कहीं. Stunting is height with respect to age. Underweight is weight with respect to age, and wasting is weight with respect to height. Life expectancy has increased to 69.4 years. It is lowest in Chhattisgarh, highest in Kerala and Delhi. Higher in urban areas as compared to rural areas. Females are expected to live longer as compared to males. These are broad things that have been outsourced from the content which is there. ठीक है. So with respect to life expectancy, urban areas में ज़्यादा है, females में ज़्यादा है, regional variation exist करता है. क्या regional variation है, highest कहाँ है, lowest कहाँ है, this is minimum which can be prepared. Then total fertility rate has come down below the replacement level. ठीक है. So replacement level was 2.1, now it is 2. However, there exists regional variation. अभी भी कुछ states हैं जहाँ पे fertility rate is above the national average. ये याद होने चाहिए. मणिपुर, मेघालय, बिहार, झारखंड, उत्तर प्रदेश. There are 5 states which still has fertility rate more than the national average. इसी के context में उत्तर प्रदेश में population control policy has been launched for 2021 to 2030. Is that clear? Why fertility rate has declined? Women empowerment हो रहा है, contraceptives हैं, better health infrastructure है, infant mortality rate decline कर रहा है, ठीक है ना, more awareness generation हो रही है, status of women is improving, female labor force participation is improving. तो ये concepts पता होने चाहिए. Question बन सकता है, right now? Briefly discuss the factors responsible for decline in fertility rate. Briefly discuss the factors responsible for decline in fertility rate. Now hold. If you know the factors which are responsible for high fertility rate, you can automatically write the points, the factors which are responsible for decline in fertility rate. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? ठीक है. So in general, that's the home assignment. Think about it कि what are the factors which are responsible for decline in fertility rate. Obviously, why fertility rate is declining? एक तो delay in marriage हो रहा है. Mean age of marriage has increased to 22.3. That's one factor. Secondly, cost of bringing a child is very high. So people are going for small family norm because of the cost of living. Third thing is participation of women in the labor market has increased. So now they are not involving themselves in the reproductive activities. Women has become more aware. They have become more empowered with respect to their reproductive rights or the knowledge about reproductive health. There is increased availability, accessibility of the contraceptives or family planning methods. Is that clear? Infant mortality rate has declined. Institutional deliveries had increased. This has also resulted into more longevity in the survival of the children. पहले क्या होता था, IMR इतना high था, CMR इतना high था, so people should used to go for more number of children because they believe only few of them will survive till adulthood. So that is there. The status of girl child has improved because of बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ. So वो जो एक obsession with male child है वो भी कहीं ना कहीं कम हो रहा है. So because of all these factors, the fertility rate has declined. However, there are 5 states where fertility rate is still above the national average. These can be the possible factors. तो चाहे वो low socio-economic development हो, चाहे वो decline in death rate is more as compared to the birth rate, चाहे high IMR, CMR हो, या फिर sun meta preference, early marriage, low status of women, lack of awareness, religious ideology, यही सारे points को just उल्टा कर दो, you will get the answer why there has been a decline. Is that very clear? Similarly, फैमिली प्लानिंग मेथड्स का लैक ऑफ अवेलेबिलिटी, अवेयरनेस, एक्सेसिबिलिटी करें तो वो रीजन है हाई फर्टिलिटी रेट का. इसको जस्ट ऑपोजिट कर दें, सो दैट इज द रीजन फॉर डिक्लाइन इन फर्टिलिटी रेट. इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? जॉइंट फैमिली नॉर्म्स है, यूनिवर्सलाइजेशन ऑफ इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ मैरिज है. दीज आर फ्यू ऑफ द फैक्टर्स विच आर रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर हाई फर्टिलिटी रेट. सेक्स रेशियो. So for the first time, the sex ratio has become favorable with respect to women. So sex ratio at birth has also improved and overall sex ratio has improved, and the reason cited has been बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ. More women empowerment हो रहा है, more awareness हो रही है, ठीक है. The government efforts have been made, so all of that can be mentioned. So that was with respect to health. Next you have trends of employment. Very quickly we'll see, hardly 10 minutes are required for this. So before the outbreak of COVID-19, urban labor market has shown the sign of improvement. चाहे वो labor force participation हो, worker population ratio हो या unemployment rate हो. लेकिन जब lockdown आया तो adverse impact हो गया. But उसका data नहीं है हमारे पास. What is labor force participation? This is the percentage of population in the labor force. Labor force consists of two set of people. One who are either employed or are seeking work, but they have still not get the work. So labor force participation rate means percentage of population in the labor force who are available for working. Then worker population ratio is defined as the percentage of employed person in the total population. So there is a difference between labor force participation rate and worker population ratio. Is that clear? So worker population ratio is defined as a percentage of employed person in the total population, and unemployment rate is basically the percentage of unemployed person in the labor force. Is that very clear? Now if you look at it, there is one particular period which I want you to focus, that is April to June 2020. That was the time when the first wave was there and it was strict lockdown which was there. So April to June 2020, can you see labor force participation rate declined, worker population ratio declined, however unemployment rate significantly got increased from 9.1% to 20.8%. However, if you look at the last data, that is Jan-March 2021, you can see again the unemployment rate has declined to 9.3. Is this very clear? Is it making sense? So this was one peak period when the first strict lockdown was imposed. Here LFPR declined, worker population ratio declined, but unemployment rate significantly increased. With the revival of economy, as you can see, unemployment rate has declined to 9.3%. Unemployment rate for male as well as females recovered to the pre-pandemic level. LFPR, WPR, they all recovered to the pre-pandemic level. Is that clear? तो कोई डेटा याद करने की जरूरत नहीं है, ये broad observations हैं जो पता होने चाहिए. Is that very clear? इज इट मेकिंग सेंस? ठीक है. हाउएवर जो हमारे पास पीरियोडिक लेबर फोर्स सर्वे का डेटा है, दिस इज टिल द फोर्थ क्वार्टर ऑफ 2020-21. उसके बाद का डेटा हमारे पास नहीं है. सो इन ऑर्डर टू identify how was the performance of labor market in 2021-2022, so we have used two things here so as to make the analysis. तो दो चीजें यूज करी हैं as proxy indicator. One is the subscription of EPFO scheme and second is the demand for work under MG नरेगा, क्योंकि यहां पे हमारे पास डेटा नहीं था. फिर वही बात है, पीरियोडिक लेबर फोर्स सर्वे लैग है, इसीलिए जो लास्ट डेटा है हमारे पास दैट इज Q4 of 2021. Is that very clear? तो हमने सब्सक्रिप्शन ऑफ EPFO स्कीम एंड डिमांड ऑफ वर्क अंडर MG नरेगा को यूज करा है. तो EPFO डेटा आपको क्या देता है? लो पेड वर्कर्स को कवर करता है, मीडियम और लार्ज एस्टैब्लिशमेंट ऑफ फॉर्मल सेक्टर. जितना भी एडिशन होता है EPFO सब्सक्रिप्शन में, वो इंडिकेट करता है टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट फॉर्मलाइजेशन ऑफ लेबर मार्केट हैज टेकन प्लेस, टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट सोशल सिक्योरिटी बेनिफिट्स हैव बीन प्रोवाइडेड टू द वर्कफोर्स. इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? तो अगर हम EPFO डेटा को एनालाइज करा था हमने, तो उससे हमें यह पता चला देयर हैज बीन अ सिग्निफिकेंट move towards formalization of the job market. So not only the existing jobs are getting formalized but also new formal jobs are getting created. So EPFO का subscription आपको ये बताता है दो चीजें, to what extent formalization is happening and the coverage of social security benefit. And EPFO data क्या cover करता है? low paid worker, less than 15,000 per month salary को cover करता है, medium large establishment of formal sector. Is that very clear? However, there was a period where EPFO subscription has declined and turned negative. एक सेकेंड, ये देखो, जो फर्स्ट लॉकडाउन का पीरियड था, दैट वाज द टाइम व्हेन दिस EPFO सब्सक्रिप्शंस जो थे ये नेगेटिव हो गए थे, राइट? दैट मींस एग्जिट हुआ था -2.9. So that means there was an exit which happened from the EPFO subscription. फिर slowly and gradually ये revive करने लग गए थे. लेकिन अगर फिर आप देखो तो सितंबर के around again it declined. Again during the second wave it declined. But no matter how much there was a decline, it was much less to compared to what happened in the first लॉकडाउन. इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? अगर सेकेंड लॉकडाउन में देखें भी तो एट मैक्स इट डिक्लाइन टू 5 लाख सब्सक्रिप्शन. बट जब फर्स्ट लॉकडाउन का पीरियड था, सो देयर वाज अ सिग्निफिकेंट डिक्लाइन -2 lakhs. मतलब देयर वाज एन एग्जिट, नेट एग्जिट विच टुक प्लेस इन टर्म्स ऑफ EPFO सब्सक्रिप्शन. हाउएवर इन द करंट कॉन्टेक्स्ट, जो लास्ट हमारे पास डेटा है नवंबर 2021, इट सेज देयर आर 13.95 lakh EPFO सब्सक्राइबर और सब्सक्रिप्शंस आर देयर, which is highest since 2017. So this shows a significant trend towards formalization. That means there has been an increase in overall formal hiring. That means there has been a shift towards formalization of the existing labor force. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? ठीक है. ट्रेंड इन डेटा ऑन डिमांड फॉर वर्क अंडर MG नरेगा. सो ओवरऑल MG नरेगा के अंडर कितनी डिमांड आती है वो इंडिकेट करता है रूरल लेबर मार्केट के बारे में. सो ओवरऑल इट वाज सीन दैट MG नरेगा एम्प्लॉयमेंट पीक्ड ड्यूरिंग द लॉकडाउन इन 2020. The demand for the work has stabilized after the second COVID wave. But अगर ओवरऑल एम्प्लॉयमेंट देखा जाए तो it is still higher than the pre-pandemic level. We can see the diagram. This pink line shows pre-pandemic level and this black line shows the current scenario. So it has improved. अगर overall aggregate देखें, so it is more than the pre-pandemic level. तो अगर overall aggregate देखें, और अगर हम peak period COVID पे देखें तो that was the time 2020 when the demand of work under MG नरेगा had peaked. Is that very clear? So this overall understanding होनी चाहिए that overall MG नरेगा का जो अगर aggregate लिया जाए तो employment is still higher than the pre-pandemic level, which can be understood through this data. That this pink line depicts the pre-pandemic level, this black line is depicting the current. So अगर current aggregate भी देखें at every point of time, it is more than the pre-pandemic level. Is this very clear? ठीक है. This MG नरेगा employment demand has peaked जब नेशन वाइड लॉकडाउन हुआ था फर्स्ट फेज. दैट वाज द टाइम इन 2020. इज दिस वेरी क्लियर? हाउएवर आफ्टर द सेकेंड वेव इट हैज स्टेबलाइज्ड. ओवरऑल अगर लॉन्ग टर्म ट्रेंड देखना है एम्प्लॉयमेंट का, तो बिटवीन 2018-19 टू 2019-20 4.7 करोड़ एडिशनल पर्सन्स हैव जॉइन्ड द वर्कफोर्स। ये एक ओवरऑल अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, बस इतना पता होना is more than enough that rural sector, the new people have entered in the rural sector more as compared to the urban workforce. Similarly, female workers have been more than the male workers. If 4.7 crore additional persons have joined the workforce, 63% of them are the female workers. So anyway, female workers have joined more as compared to the male workers. 65% of these workers are self-employed. Right, 91% of the workers are in unorganized informal sector. More than 70% of the workers are in the agriculture sector. So if you have to look for other data, so 65% are in the self-employed, यानी remaining 35% कहाँ गए? तो 18% गए casual labor में और 17% गए regular wage and salaried employees में. Is that clear? And though 65% self-employed में गए हैं, उसमें the majority has been women, right? So the women में 75% of the female workers who have joined as self-employed were the unpaid family labor. Is that very clear? ये पॉइंट था जो मैं हाईलाइट करना चाहती थी कि आपको अगर विमेन पे कोई क्वेश्चन आए विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू फीमेल लेबर फोर्स पार्टिसिपेशन, दिस इज द डेटा दैट यू कैन यूज. इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? सपोज 100 women joined in the self-employed category. Out of 100 women, 75 women have joined in the capacity of unpaid family labor. Is this very clear? Sector wise की बात करें तो 71% have been added in the agriculture sector. And जो 71% new workers add हुए हैं, उसमें से 65% are the females. That means there is feminization of agriculture. Is this very clear? Overall, trade, hotel, restaurant sector is being the similar. Share of manufacturing sector has declined. Share of construction sector has significantly declined. So agriculture sector में new workers have been added. इसीलिए लिखा है कि rural areas में more workers have been added as compared to the urban area. There has been feminization of workforce. More females have entered into the labor market. More importantly, in the context of self-employed workers, the majority of the women are confined to the unpaid family labor. These are the broad observation which has to be drawn from this data. Is this clear? Now, what has been the policy response of the government with respect to the rural livelihood? So whether it is the incentive with respect to job creation, wage employment, self-employment, social protection. Now let us suppose यहाँ तो ये दे रखा है. Suppose करो UPSC asks us a question. Write down. With respect to, in the backdrop of the impact of COVID-19 on the livelihood opportunities, in the backdrop of the impact of COVID-19 on the livelihood opportunities, analyze the policy response of the government. Analyze the policy response of the government to boost the rural livelihood. Analyze the policy response of the government with respect to boosting the rural livelihood opportunities. Is that clear? In general भी अगर क्वेश्चन आ जाए लाइवलीहुड को लेकर, यू कैन डिवाइड इट इनटू 4 पार्ट्स: वेज एम्प्लॉयमेंट, सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयमेंट, सोशल प्रोटेक्शन, इंसेंटिव्स फॉर जॉब क्रिएशन. Now with respect to incentive for job creation, you have आत्मनिर्भर भारत रोजगार योजना. तो इकोनॉमी को बूस्ट करने के लिए, एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन करने के लिए एंड इंसेंटिवाइजेशन करने के लिए फॉर क्रिएशन ऑफ एम्प्लॉयमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज अलोंग विद द सोशल सिक्योरिटी बेनिफिट, आत्मनिर्भर भारत रोजगार योजना वाज अनाउंस्ड एज अ पार्ट ऑफ आत्मनिर्भर भारत 3.0 पैकेज. तो ये जो रोजगार योजना है, इसमें गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया वुड बी क्रेडिटिंग फॉर अ पीरियड ऑफ 2 years बोथ एम्प्लॉय शेयर एज वेल एज द एम्प्लॉयर शेयर एज अ पार्ट ऑफ EPFO registered establishment. Is that very clear? Under this Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana, benefits would be provided to every establishment which is registered with EPFO and their new employees, obviously who are earning wage less than 15,000 per month. Is that clear? और ये incentive तब दिया जाएगा if the establishment are taking new employees between a certain period and to those who have lost the job between a certain period. Is that very clear? This is the incentive which is being provided for job creation. It is being provided to boost the economy, to solve the unemployment problem. Then with respect to wage employment, allocation to MG Narega has increased to 73,000 crore. To boost the employment and livelihood opportunity of the migrant workers who have returned back, Garib Kalyan Rozgar Yojana has been launched, which is focusing on target-driven work to provide employment as well as to create infrastructure in the rural areas of these 6 states. Remember, मैंने कहा था ये states याद कर लेना, ठीक है? आसाम है, MP है, UP है, उड़ीसा है. So you have to remember these states. Then, to boost self-employment, National Rural Livelihood Mission, which was launched in 2011 to seek the rural or alleviate rural poverty. And how would you do that? By mobilizing the people into self-help groups. So, we are going to ensure sustainable livelihood opportunities by mobilizing the people in rural areas into self-help groups. And through this, we will create opportunities for developing their skills to provide them access to finance, entitlements and the services. Is that clear? Then with respect to social protection, Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandhan Yojana has been launched in 2019. It is general, देख लो कि basically इसका objective क्या है कि आपको एक voluntary scheme है, contributory pension scheme है जिसमें minimum 3,000 pension, monthly pension would be provided when you attain the age of 60 years. Criteria क्या है? 18 से 40 के बीच में, monthly income 15,000 से कम होनी चाहिए, and you should not be the member of EPFO or Employee State Insurance Corporation or National Pension Scheme. Then you can join this scheme. 50% monthly contribution is payable by the beneficiary and the equal contribution would be paid by the central government. You can enroll in the scheme through Common Service Center या फिर self enroll कर सकते हो through the portal, that is www.mandhan.in. Is that very clear? Similarly, बस एक छोटा सा डिफरेंस है इस ये श्रम योगी मानधन योजना में और ये नेशनल पेंशन स्कीम फॉर ट्रेडर्स, शॉपकीपर्स एंड सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयड, इसमें बस एक डिफरेंस है, बाकी सब कुछ सेम है. वॉलंटरी है, कॉन्ट्रीब्यूटरी है, अश्योर्ड मंथली पेंशन ऑफ 3,000 ऑन द एज ऑफ 60 दिया जाएगा. 18 to 40 ईयर्स है. यू शुड नॉट बी द मेंबर ऑफ EPFO, ESIC और NPS, ठीक है, या फिर इनकम टैक्स पेयर नहीं होने चाहिए, ठीक. और यहां पे क्राइटेरिया सैलरी नहीं है, यहां पे क्राइटेरिया टर्नओवर है. सो यहां पे एनुअल टर्नओवर शुड नॉट एक्सीड 1.5 करोड़ और यू शुड नॉट बी एन इनकम टैक्स पेयर. देयर इट वाज अ सैलरी क्राइटेरिया ऑफ लेस देन 15,000. बाकी सब कुछ सेम रहता है. एनरोलमेंट थ्रू कॉमन सर्विस सेंटर या फिर आप पोर्टल को विजिट करके सेल्फ एनरोल कर सकते हो. 50% इज पेड बाय द बेनिफिशियरी एंड इक्विटेबल कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन इज पेड बाय द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट. इज दिस क्लियर? Then there is a next topic, that is eShram portal. It was launched basically to create a national database for the unorganized worker. One of the main objective of this portal was to ensure delivery of social security services to the workers. It is seeded with Aadhaar and it is for a certain age group, that is 16 to 59 years. इसमें कौन include होते हैं ये पता होना चाहिए. Question बन सकता है prelims में, which of the following statement is true with respect to eShram portal? So it was with the objective of creating a database for the unorganized worker. The objective is to facilitate delivery of social security benefits. It is seeded with Aadhaar. The criteria is 16 to 59 years का age है and it includes ASHA workers, agriculture, construction, migrant workers, street vendors, domestic helpers, rickshaw pullers, etc. ठीक है. यहां पे पोर्टेबिलिटी ऑफ द सोशल सिक्योरिटी एंड वेलफेयर बेनिफिट्स वुड बी इंश्योर्ड टू द माइग्रेंट एंड द कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्कर एट द वर्किंग प्लेस. यही मेन चैलेंज था. दिस वुड ऑल्सो बी tackled. Then जितने भी registered unorganized worker हैं, they would get a benefit of accidental insurance cover of 2 lakh rupees for a year free of cost under Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana. So that talks about portability of benefits, that talks about accidental cover. It also provides assistance to the workers if there is any national crisis or pandemic like situation. अगर registrations की बात करें on eShram portal, maximum registration is in Uttar Pradesh followed by West Bengal, Bihar, Odisha. डिटेल में पढ़ना चाहो तो जरूरत नहीं है, सिर्फ एक दो स्टेट्स के नाम याद कर लेना. मैक्सिमम उत्तर प्रदेश में है फॉलोड बाय वेस्ट बंगाल एंड बिहार. मैक्सिमम किस सेक्टर में है? एग्रीकल्चर में है. नेक्स्ट, with respect to drinking water and sanitation, you have Jal Jeevan Mission. We have just 3-4 schemes left. एक बार जल्दी से देख लेते हैं, then we will be over with the chapter. सो जल जीवन मिशन कब रोल आउट हुआ था, क्या इसका ऑब्जेक्टिव है? सो इट वॉज रोल्ड आउट इन 2019, ये लास्ट ईयर के भी इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में था. दिस इज इंपॉर्टेंट. इट एनविजन्स टू प्रोवाइड एडिक्वेट सेफ ड्रिंकिंग वाटर. डू यू रियलाइज कि अगर हंगर का क्वेश्चन हो, मैल न्यूट्रिशन का क्वेश्चन हो, ओवरऑल हेल्थ पैरामीटर का क्वेश्चन हो, दिस ड्रिंकिंग वाटर, स्वच्छ भारत मिशन और द क्लीन फ्यूल, ऑल ऑफ दिस forms an important component. So it envisions to provide adequate safe drinking water through individual household tap connection to all the rural household by 2024. यहाँ पे the goal is that rural household should get assured supply of piped water to ensure the functionality of the tap water connection. ये नहीं कि बस tap लगा के चले गए, it should be functional also. And the thing is, it is going to benefit 19 crore rural families. It is going to bridge rural urban gap. It will improve the quality of life, enhance the ease of living and public health. So that is the benefit of Jal Jeevan Mission. Now, there are special features of Jal Jeevan Mission. This you can refer. How there is a central role for women. The focus has been shifted from providing water supply instead of habitation to the household. It is not only focusing on creating the water supply infrastructure but also the delivery and the functionality to every household. So सिर्फ water tap connection नहीं create करना है और habitation में नहीं करना, अब household में करना है. And target है every rural household should have a tapped water or a piped water connection by 2024. Local village community own, operate और maintain करेगी water supply को so as to ensure assured water supply in every home. Women would be given the central role. At least 50% of the members of water and sanitation committee at village level should be women and proportionate representation from the weaker section of the society. Is that very clear? You have to ensure that assured supply of water is provided in schools, Anganwadi centers. The priority would be given to the villages which have water problem. सर्विलेंस ऑफ वाटर क्वालिटी होगी जिसके लिए हर विलेज में 5 लोगों को ट्रेनिंग दी जाएगी, स्पेशली विमेन who can use those field testing kit so as to test the quality of the water at village level. Is that clear? Water quality testing laboratories open की जाएंगी जहां पे पब्लिक जाके सैंपल को टेस्ट कर सकती है with respect to the quality of the water at a nominal charge. Then long term water security ensure किया जाएगा. Is that very clear? So एक full fledged village action plan would be there which will be focusing on the resource of water, supply, grey water reuse, operation, maintenance, etc. Then community mobilization, awareness and hand holding होगी. Water should be made everyone's business. This important component should be remembered. This is important. Jal Jeevan Mission. So what are the specific strategies under Jal Jeevan Mission? तो चाहे वो water testing हो, priority to the villages हो, community awareness, participation, hand holding हो, या फिर assurance in the water quality हो और water availability हो, habitation की जगह household को देंगे, women का central role होगा, local community participate करेगी. All of that you should remember. Swachh Bharat Mission. As far as Swachh Bharat Mission is concerned, so Swachh Bharat was launched in 2014. The target was to make India open defecation free. दो components थे, Grameen and urban. Objective था making India open defecation free. Information, education, communication campaign to bring about behavioral change, scientific solid liquid waste management, local bodies ka capacity building, enabling environment for private sector participation and eradicating manual scavenging. Currently, rural sanitation has made tremendous progress under Swachh Bharat Mission Grameen. This much toilets have been created. You don't have to remember this. But yes, now in phase 2 of Swachh Bharat Mission Grameen, the target is open defecation free plus. That is sustaining open defecation free status along with solid waste management. So now the target is open defecation free plus, that is ODF sustainability and solid liquid waste management. So kitne toilets, kitna community sanitary complexes have been created. However, that is not required. There are these 2 points you need to focus. So the percentage of households where improved sanitation facility has been observed has increased to 70.2%. In fact, in all the states, the household जो living है, sanitation facility है, वो improve करी है except Sikkim. हाँ, कहीं कहीं नेशनल एवरेज से कम है, बट इवन देन इट हैज इंप्रूव्ड फ्रॉम बिफोर एक्सेप्ट सिक्किम। सिक्किम में इंप्रूव नहीं करी है। नाउ डिस्पाइट sufficient improvement, there are certain states where the sanitation facility is below the national average. So there are few examples: Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa, Uttar Pradesh, etc. Similarly, with respect to electricity and clean cooking fuel, so clean cooking fuel के लिए you have Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, 58.6% of the household are using clean fuel for cooking, जो हमने उस चार्ट में देखा था. However, there are certain states where it is below the national average. फिर वही उत्तर प्रदेश, उड़ीसा, बिहार, झारखंड, छत्तीसगढ़, ये कुछ कॉमन नाम है, याद कर लेना. देन सौभाग्य योजना इज बेसिकली टू इंश्योर पावर फॉर ऑल. लेटेस्ट नेशनल फैमिली हेल्थ सर्वे रिपोर्ट कहती है कि 96.8% ऑफ द हाउसहोल्ड्स हैव द इलेक्ट्रिसिटी फैसिलिटी. Then Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin. It was launched in 2016. It envisages housing for all by 2022. Provide assistance for construction of 2.95 crore houses. पहले phase में 1 crore थे और बाकी in the second phase. Is that clear? It also focuses on addressing the basic needs, चाहे वो toilet हो, pipe drinking water हो, electricity connection हो, LPG connection हो, या फिर unskilled labor work हो under MG Narega. Under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, landless beneficiary will be given the highest priority. Is this clear? Then Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. The objective was to connect all the eligible unconnected habitation in rural areas, to provide connectivity by constructing all-weather road with necessary culverts and cross drainage structures which is operable throughout the year. वर्ल्ड बैंक रिपोर्ट कहती है दिस ग्राम सड़क योजना हैज अ वेरी पॉजिटिव इंपैक्ट ऑन ह्यूमन कैपिटल फॉर्मेशन. तो अगर ह्यूमन कैपिटल पे कोई क्वेश्चन आए, यू कैन ऑल्सो लिंक इट विद प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना. इफ यू हैव द कनेक्टिविटी, ऑब्वियसली इट विल इंक्रीज द ईयर ऑफ स्कूलिंग, इट विल इंक्रीज द इंसिडेंसेस ऑफ इंस्टीट्यूशनल डिलीवरी, it will improve the statistics with respect to vaccination. So World Bank report says that construction of operable road, that is Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, has a considerable impact on human capital. This is the last topic with respect to multidimensional poverty. So already there exists global multidimensional poverty index by UNDP and Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, where there are 3 dimensions and 10 indicators. On the similar lines, Niti Aayog has developed the National Multidimensional Poverty Index, which basically is consisting of 3 broad dimensions, that is schooling, health, standard of living. However, within that there are 12 indicators. It says 25% of the households are considered to be multidimensionally poor in India, with maximum being in Bihar, followed by Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. Is this very clear for everyone? So with this, the content on this comes to an end. There are just 1 or 2 odd things which I have mentioned in the PPT, but I didn't discuss in detail. वो बस एक नेशनल डिजिटल हेल्थ मिशन का एनालिसिस था, वो आप खुद देख लेना, क्योंकि आज उतना टाइम नहीं था. I've already taken 3 hours for 1 chapter, but I really wanted to discuss this chapter in detail because in the survey not much information was provided, but this chapter is very important. For example, there can be a question on vaccination strategy, there can be a question on human capital, that investment in human capital is the need of the hour. It can be an essay topic in itself, right? Similarly, there can be a question with respect to sex ratio. There can be a question with respect to fertility rate, right? There can be a question with respect to Ayushman Bharath. There can be a question with respect to Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. There can be a question with respect to unemployment, that how the unemployment, it creates disillusionment among the youth, it creates frustration among the youth. Do you realize your demographic dividend, right? Your economic growth potential, your dream to emerge as a superpower, theek hai, social harmonious fabric of the society, everything would be negatively impacted if you are not going to address the problem of unemployment, right? Because youth are known for their energy level, they are known for their idealized energy level, and if that energy is not channelized in the right direction, then your dividend will turn into disaster. They will become easily vulnerable or potential or will become a potential group for radicalization. There will be incidences of religious conflict. There will be increased incidences of crime because there would be a feeling of relative deprivation. आप खुद समझ पा रहे हो, एक यूथ है, उसको आपने एम्प्लॉयमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं दी, राइट, अनएम्प्लॉयड है वो यूथ, यानी उसके पास अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं है फॉर सोशल डेवलपमेंट, जनरली सेइंग. So if there is a problem of unemployment, I'm generally saying that these are the questions which can be there. So lack of opportunity for social mobility, increased aspirations will remain unsatisfied. This will result into feeling of relative deprivation. They will become vulnerable to radicalization. They will become more probable of committing deviant acts, which will impact the prospect of economic growth. It will impact or lead to deharmonization of the society. It will impact the social secular fabric of the country. Do you realize it will have such a far-reaching impact? Your demographic dividend will turn into disaster. So it is very important. So these topics have to be understood. Okay? So whether it is education, whether it is health, whether it is skill development, what is vocational education? That again becomes very important because half of your graduates are unemployable. So proper training should be given. So there are different efforts which have been made by the government. Economic survey deals with those efforts. And if the effort is mentioned in the economic survey, it can become a probable topic for your prelims, mains or interview level also. Is that very clear for everyone? I hope whatever we have discussed today, you have got an understanding. See, everything is not possible. अगर हम normally ये चीजें पढ़ाते हैं तो it takes some 4-5 lectures, right? So to condense that in one lecture was a challenge, but I didn't want to compromise on this extra aspect. So I have tried to provide you as holistic coverage. I hope it has added some value to your preparation. And on this note, I conclude the lecture and thank you so much for cooperating and sitting for a long period of time. And take care, people. Have a nice day. Good night. Take care. I hope you understood this. Okay? Bye, people.